It had been almost a year since I'd walked away from the sirens. 8 years as an EMT will either fortify you or hollow you out, and by the end, I was nothing but hollow. There wasn't one dramatic moment that broke me. No pileup of mangled cars, no explosion with body parts in the street. It was slower than that, a steady erosion, the kind you don't notice until you feel yourself collapse from the inside. I left with no plan, just exhaustion. Sold my place in Fort Worth, drifted west where rent was cheaper and nobody expected much from you. I told myself maybe I'd get into vet work, maybe take a class or two. But the truth was, I mostly slept too long, drank too often, and circled the same thoughts that never changed. That's how I ended up at QuickFast, a 24-hour gas station on Route 179, 10 miles out of Weatherford. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough and gave me nights to keep busy. Nights were my hours, quiet, slow, no screams, no blood soaking into my boots. The only other body on shift was Russell, mid-50s, built like a refrigerator, but his knees were shot and every step sounded like gravel crunching inside him. We didn't talk much. He stayed in the back counting boxes, old country twanging off his battered flip phone speakers. I didn't mind. Quiet was good. Quiet meant nothing was wrong. But on November 15th, 2022, quiet didn't last. I remember the cold first. Not winter cold, but that wet kind that seeps into your bones and makes your fingers stiff. A drizzle hung in the air, lazy, undecided whether it wanted to fall. The pumps stood empty, the road silent, not even crickets trying their luck. It was 11:47 p.m. when the glass door chime broke the stillness. I glanced up from a half-solved crossword, expecting a trucker or maybe some drunk staggering in. Instead, a man stepped inside. Damp hoodie clinging to him, jeans soaked up to the calves, one hand gripping a red plastic gas can. He didn't say a word, just stared past me toward the back of the store. Thin, not gaunt, but wiry in the way men get when they live out of their cars, surviving on gas station coffee and whatever they can scrounge. His face, God, it looked faded, like a photograph that had been rained on. No sharp lines left, just a washed-out face with eyes that seemed to belong to no one. "Pump's not working tonight," I said, making my voice steady, like it was just another customer. "Before you fill, you gotta pay inside." He turned without acknowledging me, slipping into the snack aisle. Past the rotating beef jerky rods, the 2-for-1 cans of Monster. On the overhead camera, I watched him leave a thin trail of rainwater, each step deliberate, too slow. Then he drifted out of frame. I opened my mouth to call out, but Russell's voice rasped through the intercom, low and tight with fear. "Mags, don't move. He's holding something." I froze. "What?" I whispered back. "He's got something in his hand. Saw him by the cooler. Not a gun. Something else. Metal. Big." My fingers hovered under the counter just above the panic button. The silent alarm, the one they told us only to hit if it was life or death. Then the man stepped back into view. This time the axe was in his hand. He held it low, casual. The blade rusted, handle splintered like it had been dragged out of a burned-down shed. But the grip, that grip told me it wasn't for intimidation. He meant to use it. He looked at me then, smiled, just the corner of his mouth twitching upward, as though he'd been here before and already knew how the scene played out. I slammed the button. He didn't react. "You always call them," he said. His voice was soft, rasping like smoke had scorched his throat. "Always the same. Same lights. Same sound. Same look on your face." Something in me jolted. Not memory, but recognition. Not that I knew him, but that he knew me. Or believed he did. He took a step forward, dragging the axe head across the wire racks. Bags of Doritos, Pringles, candy bars toppled one by one. The screech of blade on metal ripped through the store. It wasn't just noise. It was play, a child throwing things from shelves, except every second of it was meant for me. I backed toward the office door behind the counter, keeping my hands visible. "Sir, look," I said, steady as I could. "You don't need to. Whatever's going on, we can—" The axe came down, hard, slammed into the counter not 5 inches from my hand. The laminate cracked like dry bone. I stumbled back, shoved myself into the office, and locked the door. Russell was already on the floor. His face was ashen, one hand clutching his shoulder, blood soaking through his sleeve. "He got me," he gasped. His breath hitched. Didn't see him swing. Too fast. I slid him against the filing cabinet, heart pounding, and fumbled for the phone. My fingers were shaking as I dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was clipped, calm. I forced the words out. "Our address, armed suspect, 1 injured." "He's still inside," I whispered. "We're locked in the office. There's blood." "Stay on the line," she said. "Officers are on the way. 9 minutes." 9 minutes. It felt like 9 hours. Out in the store, the man began humming. Slow, aimless, the kind of tune a child makes when they don't know the song. "You always call them," he muttered, voice drifting between himself and us. On the grainy black and white monitor, I watched him pace the aisles, the axe dragging along the tile behind him like a leash he had all the time in the world to tug. Every few seconds he'd stop mid-step, sniff the air like a dog catching a scent, then tilt his head sharply, listening for something only he could hear. Russell groaned beside me, low and wet. I pressed my palm against his wound, felt the sticky warmth seep between my fingers. No arterial spray, thank God. Probably muscle. Bad, but survivable, if we got through the next 10 minutes. The man stopped directly in front of the office door. He leaned down until his face hovered inches from the glass, fogging it with each slow exhale. It was the casualness that unsettled me most, like he was checking on something baking in the oven. His lips moved again. "You don't remember me," he whispered, "but I remember you." I didn't answer. Couldn't. My body had gone rigid. One hand stayed clamped over Russell's shoulder, the other gripped the phone receiver so tightly it felt like if I loosened it, it might bite me. He tapped the glass once with the flat of the axe head. Not a swing, not even forceful, just a sharp ping that echoed in the tiny office. Then he cocked his head at me, bird-like, watching the way you'd watch a rabbit stumble in the grass. "Maggie Dorset," he said. The sound of my name almost stopped my heart. I hadn't worn a tag since my first month at QuickFast. It scratched my neck, and nobody on Graveyard cared who you were. I never said my name aloud to strangers. Never. "You patched up my brother, 2018. Southbound 820 near Bryant Irvin. Red Civic. He was bleeding out. You told him he'd be fine." I tried to force the memory out of the fog of adrenaline. My brain spun, useless, flipping through hundreds of calls, faces blurred together in blood and flashing lights. Nothing stuck. "I remember," he said, almost smiling now. He wasn't fine. He began pacing again, each step heavy like he was tethered to the ground. "I found the report online. Said his liver was ruptured. Said there was nothing you could have done." He stopped. His face twitched, the faint curl of a smile breaking into something harder. "I read that line 500 times. Nothing you could have done." That's when I realized this man wasn't just unhinged. He was stuck, trapped in one night years ago, replaying it until it hardened into hate. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice shaking. "That means I tried. I swear I tried. I don't remember everything, but if I was there, if I said—" Russell shifted with a wince, drawing my eyes for half a second. Blood still leaked, but slower now. He'd hold on. The man chuckled. The sound was thin, strangled, like someone choking on a laugh only they understood. "You were calm," he rasped, held his hand, told him he'd make it. His eyes darkened. His voice dropped into something guttural. "You lied." I didn't even realize I'd moved until I felt cold metal against my leg. I'd crouched behind the filing cabinet, clutching Russell's aluminum bat like it was a cross. The dispatcher's voice crackled faintly through the receiver. "Ma'am, officers are approaching. Can you confirm the suspect's position?" "He's just outside the office door," I whispered. "Talking to us." "Do not engage. Stay quiet. Officers will announce when they enter." Another ping hit the glass. Louder this time. He leaned closer, fogging the pain with his breath. "I thought about a gun," he murmured. "Cleaner, quicker. But it's not about quick. It's about remembering. You don't just walk away. You don't get to be someone else." Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but rising, crawling closer. My chest tightened with relief. His expression never shifted. Calm, certain. "You don't get to be someone else," he repeated, softer now. "Not after what you do." Then, without warning, he turned, walked away, calmly, casually, like he'd forgotten what he came in for. I watched him on the monitor, the grainy footage making him ghost-like as he slipped past the coolers and pushed open the fire exit. The alarm screamed through the store. By the time the cops stormed in, he was gone. Russell survived. 6 stitches, a mild concussion, and bruises that would fade. The cops combed the store for hours, replayed the tape frame by frame. They found the axe near the employee break room, caked with rust and streaked with blood. The handle bore the faint etching of Station 34. Station 34, 5 minutes from where I used to run calls. I'd parked my rig there more times than I could count. Drank stale coffee in their kitchen, once broke down crying in their laundry room after a baby we couldn't save. That firehouse had been shut down 2 years back. Budget cuts. When I asked the officer if they'd ID'd him, he shook his head. Ghost. No prints, no ID, nothing in the system. Axe was reported missing 6 months ago. Russell never came back to QuickFast after that night. Took a security job in Fort Worth instead. I quit 2 days later. They offered counseling, a hotline, a card signed by corporate. It felt like trying to patch a skull fracture with a Band-Aid. But what haunted me wasn't the axe or the wound or even his words. It was his smile. That slight curl, the look that said, "You don't remember me, but I've never stopped watching you." It's been almost 3 years now. I rent a small studio above a laundromat on the edge of Wichita Falls. Mornings, I feed stray cats and clean cages at the shelter. It's quiet, the kind of quiet you only get with age and distance. But I don't go into gas stations after dark, not even to use the bathroom. Every time I see a man in a hoodie near a storefront, the coil tightens in my gut. The memory rises like steam off old blood. Trauma isn't the clean story people think. Flashbacks, nightmares. Sometimes it's just noticing how every convenience store hums the same way. How the jerky racks always stand in the same place. How some things never change no matter how far you run. I still check every aisle. Still watch every exit when I pump gas. And late at night when someone walks through a door too slowly, I find myself holding my breath. The worst part is he never came back. He didn't need to. Because the story was never about what he did. It was about what he left inside me. Some wounds don't bleed. Some monsters don't hide under beds. They walk in when you're too tired to see them coming. And the scariest part of survival is realizing the story didn't end. You just got away first. People think the hardest part of night shifts is the chaos. The drunks who stumble in, the fistfights over nothing, the guy who swears at you because his scratch-off expired last month. But that's not what wears you down. It's the quiet. That eerie stillness between midnight and 3 a.m., when the rest of the world feels like it's forgotten you exist. It seeps into your skin, makes you doubt what you're seeing. Like your own reflection staring back at you from the soda fridge glass, eyes a fraction too slow to follow. I've always been more comfortable awake at night. Growing up, silence meant safety. My dad was a mean drunk and my mom was gone by the time I turned 12. Staying awake past midnight wasn't rebellion. It was self-preservation. I learned to love the dark because the dark didn't expect anything from me. Years later, when my boyfriend of 4 years cheated and bailed the same week rent came due, nights became survival again. Any shift I could grab, I took. The Beacon Gas Express on Mulberry Ridge paid like crap, but they didn't ask questions. I clocked in, stocked shelves, and clocked out. That was enough. But the problem with quiet jobs is you start noticing things that shouldn't be noticed. The way a display shifts an inch overnight. The pump light that flickers like someone standing just out of sight. After 6 weeks on the job, I was used to the oddities. Still, that October Saturday started heavy with unease. Too many neon cans crammed into the cooler, the outside camera dead again, and that one flickering pump bathing the lot in jittery light. It was 12:22 a.m. when the bell over the door chimed. I looked up from my crossword. A man walked in, tall, late 40s, salt and pepper hair cut sharp, face smooth-shaven like he belonged in a cologne ad. He wore a long dark coat and leather gloves, way too polished for a back-road gas station, and he didn't buy a thing. "Slow night?" he asked, voice steady, almost rehearsed. "Pretty much dead," I said, forcing a shrug. He didn't smile. Not really. He leaned against the counter, watching me like he was waiting for something unsaid. Then came the questions. "You from around here?" "Not really," I answered. "Ever get nervous working alone?" I shrugged again, polite, non-committal. "You like being seen?" That one snagged me. His tone wasn't small talk, it felt pointed, personal. I laughed weakly, brushed it off. "You always close by yourself?" he pressed. "No," I lied. "Co-workers are out back smoking." His head tilted slightly. "Right, the tall guy in the red shirt." I froze. There was no co-worker, no red shirt. No one else had been in all night. He tapped the counter twice, deliberate, and walked out without another word. The second the door shut, I bolted to the back room and locked it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Weird people wander into gas stations. It comes with the territory. But this wasn't just weird. This was wrong. I pulled up the lot feed on the old monitor. Static. The outside camera had been glitching for weeks, but this was total snow, black and white buzzing. I smacked the side of the monitor. Nothing. Minutes crawled by. My pulse finally slowed, but something gnawed deeper than fear. A sense of recognition, like his face wasn't new, like I'd seen him before, in a dream, or maybe a warning I hadn't understood. At 12:58, the bell chimed again. I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was him. And this time, he brought someone else. The woman at his side was tall, wrapped in a beige trench coat, scarf cinched at her jaw. Her blonde hair framed sharp cheekbones, lips painted dark. She smiled the instant her eyes found mine, warm and practiced. "Hey," she said brightly. "Pays real benefits, you'd be perfect. We're hiring for a new media startup. Remote work. Great opportunity." I blinked. "I'm not really looking right now." She leaned in, smile fixed, voice syrup sweet. "Just let me show you the site. Totally legit. 5 minutes outside. Once in a lifetime deal." Something about her felt off, like a stage actor forcing lines, the strings of the puppet just barely visible. I glanced at the monitor behind me. No car at the pumps, but out past the floodlight's edge, deep in the tree line, 2 pinpoints. Headlights, no engine noise, no movement. "Yeah." I forced a nervous smile. "I'm gonna have to call my manager real quick." Her face twitched, barely, but enough. A tiny flinch she tried to cover with that perfect smile. He stepped closer, too close, his presence pressing against me like a shadow I couldn't shake. His voice dropped, low but sharp enough to cut through the hum of the cooler. "You should have come the first time, now you've wasted our time." Before I could answer, before my brain even caught up, the bell over the door rang again. A family walked in. A mom and dad, mid-30s, with 2 kids no older than 10. The kids shot straight for the candy aisle, grabbing at shelves like they'd been freed from some invisible cage. The whole scene felt like a hallucination, so ordinary it cracked the tension in half. The woman in the scarf adjusted her coat and instantly flipped back to cheerful. "Have a good night," she said brightly, like nothing strange had just passed between us. And then they were gone. No glance back, no muttered goodbye. Just two shadows slipping through the door and disappearing into the dark. I stayed frozen behind the counter, silent, while the family shopped. My throat was too tight to form words. When they finally left, I shut the door behind them, twisted the lock, and slid the chain across. Even though it was against policy. Screw the rules. I didn't care anymore. I just needed the night to end. The rest of the shift dragged like a fever dream. I kept glancing out the windows, half expecting headlights to flare from the trees again. The security feed still buzzed with static, no matter how many times I smacked the side of the monitor. 3 times, I lifted the phone and pretended to call my manager, holding it to my ear for minutes at a time in case they were watching, in case they came back. They didn't. When I finally stumbled home, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch with the blinds drawn, TV muted, replaying every detail in my head. The way he knew I was alone, the way her smile never cracked even when I told her no, the headlights deep in the woods, that unnatural stillness. 2 days later, a cop came by. It was late afternoon, just before another shift. He was clean-cut, uniform crisp, not much older than me. "Officer Lindell," he said. He was following up on a report about a missing woman from a gas station 2 towns over. Last seen around midnight. Talking to a couple. A tall man in a dark coat, a blonde woman in a scarf. He said carefully, watching me for any reaction. My stomach dropped. I told him everything, every word, every look. He scribbled notes while I talked, too fast, like he already knew the story. Then he asked to see the camera feed. I led him to the back. Of course, the monitor was working perfectly now. The exterior footage from that night? Still corrupted. Nothing but snow. He jotted it down anyway. "You did the right thing," he told me before leaving. "These folks move around, they never hit the same place twice, but they leave breadcrumbs." I didn't ask what that meant. 3 nights later, I found the word "liar" sprayed across the back service door in thick red paint. It was 6:03 a.m., just as I was finishing another shift. I filed a report, but the manager brushed it off as kids messing around. Graffiti wasn't unusual, he claimed, even though our store had never had a single tag in the 3 years it had been open. I knew better. The lines were too sharp, too deliberate, too personal. The next morning, I put in for day shifts only. No exceptions. Some of the staff rolled their eyes, said I was being paranoid. An assistant manager even smirked when I explained. "You watch too many crime shows, yo," he joked. But he signed off on the change. I lasted 3 more weeks. Then a story broke on the local news. A burned-out car had been found in the woods near Silva. The body inside was unrecoverable, but investigators identified scraps of fabric, scarf material, coat lining, matching descriptions from multiple gas station reports. The couple was never found. I never worked another night shift. 3 months later, I moved to Boone. Took a front desk job at a dog kennel. Still minimum wage, still long hours, but with windows, people, and locks I could trust. I keep the store's old key in my junk drawer, sealed in a Ziploc bag with the word "Remember" scrawled across it. Because what happened to me wasn't a story. It wasn't some close call to laugh about later. It was a pattern that almost claimed me. A pattern that still haunts places where the world falls quiet, where the cameras break, where the lights flicker above pump 4, where tree lines hide headlights with engines that never start. Sometimes I wonder how many others they approached. How many said yes? How many never got the chance to quit? If something feels wrong, it is. Trust your gut. Trust the unease in your bones. The world doesn't always scream its dangers. Sometimes it whispers them, hoping you'll ignore the sound. Don't. I've always believed that places carry memory, not the kind carved into plaques or street signs, but something heavier, something that clings to the air like smoke after a fire. Ridgeway was one of those places, a town that didn't want to be remembered, yet refused to let go once you stumbled into it. I'd been drifting for 3 weeks, living out of a cheap rental with no real plan, chasing a half-finished article that no editor had actually asked for. My pitch, at least to myself, was simple. Dying towns, the quiet gaps between highway exits, the places you blink past without stopping. Truth was, I wasn't chasing a story. I wanted to dissolve into one. By the time I turned off onto Old Timber Road, the snow was coming down sideways, a restless static across my windshield. Then Ridgeway appeared, if you could call it that. The fuel stop looked more like a mirage than a place of business. Its red paint had peeled back in long curls from the wood like scabs lifting from old skin. One buzzing light above the door flickered weakly, spilling a thin yellow glow over the cracked concrete stoop. I was running on fumes, gas and otherwise. Inside, the place smelled faintly of scorched coffee grounds and old motor oil. No music, no radio chatter, just the silence and the low hum of a freezer chest in the back. Behind the counter sat a young woman, mid-20s maybe, pale-skinned with messy blonde hair knotted low at her neck. She didn't bother to look up when I stepped in, just nodded once and turned a page of the paperback in her hands. I grabbed jerky, 2 bottled waters, and poured black coffee from a thermal pot that looked like it had survived the Carter administration. I was halfway to the counter when the door groaned open behind me. 2 men walked in, hunting camo. Heavy boots caked with dried mud that cracked off in flakes as they moved. One was tall and thin, sharp angles under his jacket. The other shorter, thick through the shoulders, the kind of build that clung to you years after football. They didn't browse. They didn't even glance at the shelves. They just looked at me. "Out of town?" the tall one asked, though it wasn't really a question. I gave a short nod. "Just passing through?" He grinned, but it carried no warmth. "Road's about to ice over." "I'll take my chances," I muttered, moving toward the counter. The woman scanned my items slowly, methodically. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Don't hang around here too long." She didn't look at me when she said it. I paid in cash, something I almost never did, and the silence seemed to follow me out into the cold. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The pump was dead. I slid my card in. Nothing. Tried again. The screen flickered once, then went black. The nozzle was fused to its holster, like it hadn't been touched in weeks. I turned back toward the store. The hunters were still there, exactly where I'd left them. But the cashier, the girl, was gone. I stepped inside again. "Hey," I called. "Pump's not working." No answer. The taller man tilted his head, voice smooth but oddly hollow. "She's out back." It wasn't what he said, it was the way he said it. Too steady, too practiced. Like a line he'd said 100 times before, without bothering to make it sound real. My stomach dropped. "She didn't even have a coat," I muttered, mostly to myself. Neither man moved. I backed out slowly, hands open at my sides like I didn't want trouble. Outside, the snow had thickened into a curtain. I could barely make out the tree line anymore. That's when I saw it. Movement at the corner of the building. Someone peeking around the edge. Her. She lifted one hand, waved once, then ducked out of sight. I moved fast but careful, forcing myself not to run, crunching through the snow until I rounded the corner. She was pressed tight against the brick, breath fogging in sharp bursts. "Here," she whispered urgently. Her eyes darted toward the front of the store. "Don't let them box you in. They're not from here." Her voice was sharp, almost bitten off. I looked past her shoulder and froze. Another truck sat just beyond the property line, half sunken in the snow. No headlights, no sound. The license plate had been wrapped in duct tape. That was when my stomach turned cold. "What the hell's going on?" I whispered. "You don't want to know," she said quickly. backing a step away like the words themselves might burn her. "You hesitate. You're done. Just get in your car and go. Don't wait, or they'll follow." I didn't think. I bolted across the icy lot, shoes sliding out from under me, arms flailing to keep balance. My fingers shook so hard I nearly dropped the keys. Somehow I jammed them into the lock, yanked the door open, and tumbled inside. The door slammed shut just as I threw the car into reverse. The tires screamed against the frozen ground. I fishtailed, clipped a snowbank hard enough to jolt my teeth, then straightened out. In the rear view, I caught sight of one of the hunters stepping outside, head tilted like he was curious, not hurried. The second followed close behind, something heavy and metallic dangling from his hand. A pipe, maybe, or a crowbar. I didn't wait to find out. I stomped the gas. Snow churned up behind me, blanketing the mirror in white blur. My gas light had already been glowing when I pulled into Ridgeway. I was running on fumes, but I couldn't stop. Not until I saw real light. Not until I was sure I was back in the world. For the next 20 miles, I didn't check my mirrors. Didn't even blink too long. The road stretched on in front of me, a black ribbon lost inside a storm of white static. No signs, no towns, just noise and fear pressing in tight around me. When I finally coasted into the next gas station, I almost sobbed with relief. Bright LED signage lit up the parking lot, a family unloading snacks into a minivan under the glow. Civilization. My gauge read 3 miles to empty. I stumbled inside the convenience store, phone already in hand, and called the county sheriff. The dispatcher answered casual, bored, like she'd done it 1,000 times. But the second I gave her the name, Ridgeway Fuel Stop, there was a pause. A silence that stretched too long. "You sure that's the place?" she asked finally. "Yes," I said quickly. Red building on Timber Road, 2 guys in camo, blonde girl behind the counter, early 20s, quiet. Her tone changed, flattened. "Sir, that station's been closed since August. Electrical fire. The girl working that night didn't make it. Elena Sanders. You must be mistaken." The name hit like a stone to the chest. I almost dropped the phone. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in that gas station parking lot until dawn, doors locked, engine running, eyes burning holes into the empty road. Every time a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, my gut knotted tight. Around 3 a.m., needing to ground myself in something solid, I pulled the receipt from my coat pocket. Proof, anything. But the paper was blank. Not smudged, not faded, just twisted ink, bled into black static, unreadable. The coffee cup in my console still had Ridgeway's logo, but even that looked wrong, faded, discolored, like it had been sitting in some back room for years. I searched online with what little battery I had left. Ridgeway Fuel Stop, the fire, August 3rd, 2022. 6 months ago to the day. An article with a photo, Elena Sanders. Same blonde hair, same paperback novel stacked on the counter behind her. Same half smirk that never quite touched her eyes. My stomach heaved. I slammed the laptop shut and sat in silence until the battery finally drained. I don't tell that story anymore. Tried once, drunk at a bar in Pittsburgh, and some guy just laughed, asked what I'd been on. I don't write about Ridgeway either. It's the chapter I cut out, the ghost story that stuck too close to the skin. Thing is, I've seen forgotten places before. Towns that crumble, rest stops swallowed by weeds, outposts on the edges of America where the lights don't stay lit. But Ridgeway was different. Ridgeway wasn't forgotten. Ridgeway was waiting. And something else was waiting inside it. Sometimes I dream about Elena. She's behind the counter, same as before, flipping a page, lifting her eyes just long enough to whisper something I can never quite hear. I've stopped trying to understand what Ridgeway was, or is. Some things don't need to be explained. They just need to be remembered, long enough to never go back. Some places don't die. They wait. So if you're out there, on some long stretch of highway, and the road feels too quiet, the air too still. Trust your instincts. Not every exit is meant to be taken, and not every place marked on a map still belongs to the world. I'm not the kind of person who talks much. Not in groups, not online, not even to the neighbors whose names I've never bothered to learn. I've always preferred staying out of notice. That's partly why I ended up working nights at Northside Fuel Mart on Holland Avenue, just outside Erie. Nights are quiet. Nights don't demand conversation. They don't push you into small talk or force you to wear a fake smile. I took the job because I needed something that wouldn't crush me the way restaurants and offices did. Anxiety made it impossible to stick to those places. Too many bodies crammed in, too much noise, too many eyes. But a gas station after midnight, where maybe 2 or 3 people came through an hour, that I could handle. It was mid-April, but winter wasn't ready to let go. The kind of cold where your breath still shows in the air. My coworker Todd had called out sick, flu supposedly, and the manager practically begged me to cover graveyard. I didn't want to, but I needed the hours. And honestly, I figured the shift would be nothing. Coffee refills, a pack of Marlboros for some guy on his way to third shift. The usual. By 2 a.m., the rain had finally stopped. The station looked like a faded photograph, harsh fluorescent lights glowing down on slick asphalt, puddles reflecting the canopy like smeared mirrors. A vending machine by the ice chest hummed softly, filling the silence in a way that almost felt too loud. I was behind the counter halfway through reorganizing the cigarette shelf, the little TV bolted above the fridge muttering through an old true crime doc. I wasn't paying much attention until I saw headlights swing across the glass. A white pickup, mid-2000s Ford maybe, rolled into pump 6 and just sat there. I waited for the sound of the pump clicking on. It never came. At first I thought maybe he'd forgotten his wallet or was digging something out of the bed, but the truck didn't move. No door opened. Nothing. Finally, after almost a full minute, the driver's door creaked open. A man stepped out. He didn't grab his phone. He didn't start fueling. He just stood there beside the pump like he'd arrived early for something and was waiting to be told what to do. I figured maybe he'd come inside to pay cash. He didn't. 5 minutes dragged by, then 10. Still no movement toward the station. Just him, standing under the pump light, his face hidden beneath the shadow of a cap and the hood of a black jacket. His hands stayed shoved deep in his pockets. He was staring at the store. At me, probably. I leaned forward and hit the intercom. "Hey, sir. Need help out there?" The sound crackled through the speakers outside. No response. He didn't flinch, didn't look around, didn't even blink from what I could see. Instead, he started walking. Not toward the door. He circled the pump. Slow, deliberate, like he was measuring something invisible. He didn't glance at the price display or the handle. Just kept pacing, same loop, over and over. That's when my stomach tightened in that way you can't explain. The kind of instinct that creeps in before your brain has words for it. Something wasn't right. Then he tilted his head up. His eyes went straight to the security camera mounted above the pump. And he smiled. Not a polite smile. Not the sort you give when someone lets you cut ahead in line. This one was wrong. Crooked. A slow pull of the mouth up one side while the rest of his face stayed locked and lifeless, like only part of him had learned what smiling was supposed to look like. I didn't even notice I'd moved until the cool metal of the ice cream cooler pressed against my back. My breath left me in a shaky mutter. Nope. I ducked into the back office, slammed the door shut, and twisted the lock. The sound of it catching was the first relief I'd felt since he stepped out of that truck. The office had a bank of monitors wired to the cameras. I flipped to the feed for Pump 6. There he was, still circling, still smiling up at the lens like he knew I was watching. That's when I saw it. The passenger side door. It wasn't shut, just open a crack, barely an inch, but enough. enough to see the outline of someone slumped in the passenger seat. Long hair spilled forward, pale face half hidden, utterly still. I leaned closer to the monitor, squinting hard. Could have been a woman. Could have been a mannequin tossed there to rot. Could have been a body. Before I could decide which, the lights flickered just once. But it was enough. The monitors went black, then blinked back on a second later. When they did, my stomach clenched. He was gone. No chime from the front door. No footsteps. No engine. Just silence so complete it pressed in on my ears. I whipped my eyes toward the back monitor. Nothing. My chest tightened. I scanned the lot feed. Truck still parked. Passenger door shut now. My throat went dry. That meant he was somewhere between me and that truck. Then, knock, not from the front, from the back door, the staff door, the one I had locked. I froze, every breath suspended. Another knock, harder this time, rattling through the thin office walls, then scratching. Slow, deliberate. Something hard dragging across the metal, grating like nails on bone. My phone was already in my grip. My voice came out a whisper. 911, please. I think someone's trying to break in. The dispatcher's tone was steady, practiced calm. Officers were 5, maybe 6 minutes away. Stay on the line. Stay in the office. Don't move. I nodded even though she couldn't see me, eyes fixed on the locked door like it might dissolve if I blinked. The scratching stopped. My heart thudded loud enough to drown out the vending machine hum. Then, ping. Motion alert. Pump 2. I spun to the monitor. There he was again, strolling toward the truck like he'd just remembered he had somewhere else to be. Slow, casual, no rush at all. He climbed in, closed the door, and pulled away, taillights glowing dull red until they shrank down Holland Avenue and slipped into the dark. By the time the officers arrived, I was still shaking so hard I had to grip the counter to stand steady. They took my statement, asked if I recognized the guy. I shook my head, checked the cameras with them. When they ran the plates, the result twisted my stomach tighter. Stolen, 3 hours west. Then one officer pulled up earlier footage I hadn't looked at. About an hour before he pulled up to pump 6, the truck was already there, across the street, parked with the lights off. A black shape, engine cold, just sitting in the dark facing the station. They zoomed in. You could barely make out the driver, head tilting once, then again. Watching. Waiting. What about the passenger? I asked, though my throat was dry enough to crack. The officer froze the frame, leaned closer, then muttered. Hard to say. Could have been a mannequin. Could have been someone unconscious. Could have been worse. They canvassed the blocks around, checked a few motel lots. Nothing. No sign of the truck. No sign of him. No ID match. No license trace. Just gone. I still work at Northside. I still take night shifts, but never alone. That was the deal I struck with myself. Manager didn't argue. Cops didn't either. And nothing's happened since. Not exactly like that. But sometimes, a truck pulls in late, sits at a pump, and doesn't move. Doesn't fuel. Doesn't send anyone inside. And I watch. Not for the face. Not for the smile. I watch for the stillness. For the ones who just sit. Because I've learned something I wish I hadn't. Not everyone who pulls up to a gas station is there for gas. Some are hiding, some are hunting, some only want to be seen just once before they vanish again. And me? I lock the back door first, always, because danger doesn't need dark alleys or haunted houses. Sometimes it waits in places too ordinary to question, until you do. Stay sharp, trust your gut, and never ignore the ones who stand too long under the light, doing everything except what they came for. I don't usually drive at night. I hate the way the dark presses in on the road, how the headlights carve out a tunnel and everything beyond it feels swallowed, erased, like I'm the last person alive. But that Saturday, I didn't really have a choice. Jess had thrown one of her famous movie nights again, and this one was all horror films. She's the kind of friend who insists on just one more, until suddenly the credits are rolling and you realize the sun's almost due back up. I'd promised my grandma I'd be home by 10. By the time I finally pulled out of Jess's driveway, it was creeping past 11:30. Normally, I'd stick to Highway 9, familiar, wide, bright with street lights every 100 feet. Safe. But there was construction blocking most of it off, and my GPS forced me onto the old back roads. Roads I hadn't touched since high school, riding shotgun while my cousin blasted music and sped curves he shouldn't have. I was already worn down, stomach empty, eyelids heavy, when the gaslight blinked on. My gut sank. Grandma always warned me never to let the tank run too low. "You don't know what kind of trouble you'll find on these roads," she'd say. I used to laugh, but now, alone in the dark with the woods pressing in tight like they were leaning to whisper, her words didn't feel so funny. Then, up ahead, light. A glowing sign flickering like a moth trapped in glass. Franklin fuel stop. It looked half dead even from the road. The lot was cracked, weeds snaking through the concrete. A single car sat by the air pump, a black sedan, door shut, no lights, no movement. Still, I slowed. 5 minutes, I told myself. Just enough to fill up, grab something cold to drink, then I'd be gone. The door chimed when I pushed inside. No music, no background chatter, just a weak buzzing from a bad fluorescent tube and the hum of a cooler against the wall. Behind the counter sat an older man in a faded green flannel. His stubble was days old, his pencil tapping against a crossword like he'd been stuck on the same clue forever. "Hey," I murmured. He barely lifted his eyes. The smell hit next. Old mop water and burned coffee grounds. One fridge with sodas, a short shelf of dusty snacks. No hot food, no Slurpee machine. I grabbed a Dr. Pepper and a granola bar and carried them to the counter. "Pump still work?" I asked. He looked up like I'd asked him something personal. Finally said, "Cash only." I slid a 10 across. He nodded once, no smile, no small talk. Transaction over. The night air outside felt different. Heavy, like it knew something I didn't. I turned toward my car and stopped cold. The sedan's driver door was hanging open. I hadn't heard anyone. No footsteps on gravel. It had been closed when I went in. My keys dug into my palm as I hurried to my car, popped the tank, shoved the nozzle in. Every few seconds, my eyes jumped to the shadows, back to the open sedan door, then to the tree line pressing close. That's when I heard him. "You from around here?" He was just there, 10 feet away. Tall, standing still, jeans dark, jacket zipped all the way up, ball cap pulled low. I hadn't heard him approach. No crunch of gravel, no breath. I cleared my throat, tried to sound casual. "Just passing through." He tilted his head slightly like he was studying me. "Out here alone. These roads," he said, his voice low, even. "Not safe. Girl shouldn't stop. Won't be long. You don't look like you're in a rush." The pump clicked and I nearly sobbed with relief. I yanked the nozzle free, jammed it back into the cradle, and spun toward him. He was closer now, close enough that I could see the faint stubble shadowing his jaw. "You waiting on someone?" he asked, voice flat. "No." "You sure?" I stepped back, angling toward my car door. "Yeah, I'm sure." My phone was still inside. So was my purse. All I had was the sharp edge of my keys clenched in my fist. I darted a glance at the window of the station, hoping for backup. The clerk's chair was empty. The faint glow inside flickered once and vanished, plunging the whole front into darkness. My breath caught. My chest hurt. Then my eyes landed on something worse. My passenger door was cracked open. I hadn't touched it. "Back off," I snapped, louder this time. The sound of my own voice betrayed me, pitched too high. He didn't move. Then the sedan's headlights flared to life behind him, flooding the lot with a cold glare. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, perfectly still, just watching. That was it. I didn't think. My body just moved. I dove into my car, slammed the door, hit the lock, and jammed the gear shift into reverse. The tires screamed against the concrete, rubber burning, as I shot backward. I nearly took out the rusted mailbox by the exit. My heart hammered so violently it drowned out the engine. My hands were shaking so badly the steering wheel rattled under my grip. I didn't look back. Not once. Not until I hit the 2-lane that bent toward the state road. No headlights in the mirror. Nothing trailing me. I didn't stop until 12 miles later, when the yellow glow of a Dollar General sign cut through the dark. I swerved into the lot, stumbled out of the car, and ran inside. The kid at the counter looked like I'd dropped a bomb when I begged him to call the cops. 20 minutes crawled by before an officer showed. I spilled everything in a rush. The station, the man, the sedan, the door. He wrote it all down, calm and methodical, then called for another unit to check the place out. When he returned, his face told me the answer before his words did. He shook his head slowly. "Ma'am," he said, "careful. Steady. Franklin fuel stop's been closed for months. No permits, no utilities. It's been off the grid since April. You didn't walk into a gas station tonight. You walked into a building someone's squatting in." I asked about the black sedan, about the man, about the crossword puzzle on the counter. They found nothing. No car, no clerk, no lights, no hum of a cooler. Just a hollow, dark building with broken shelves and dust. No cameras, no trace. "You're lucky," they told me. Probably scared them off. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. I didn't sleep when I got home. Not really. I locked every door, turned on every light, sat with my knees pulled up to my chest. Even when my body finally gave in and I dozed for an hour or two, I woke with the same thought. I hadn't escaped, not completely. When morning came, I forced myself outside to check the car. I needed proof, some scrap of evidence that it wasn't just exhaustion playing tricks on me. That's when I saw it. A napkin, folded neatly, tucked into the side pocket of my passenger door. My stomach flipped. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was jagged, uneven. 4 words. "You left the back unlocked." I stood in my driveway for what felt like forever, staring at it, cold washing over me in waves. It's still in my drawer. I couldn't throw it away. Not yet, not ever. I haven't driven alone at night since. I don't take shortcuts. I don't let my tank dip below half, because some places aren't abandoned. They're waiting, and danger doesn't always scream. It watches, it waits, and it slips into your passenger seat the moment you forget how close it really is. Trust your gut, lock your doors, and don't ignore the signs, especially the quiet ones. I've always been more at ease with silence than with small talk. Numbers don't judge, don't twist meanings, don't leave you second-guessing yourself at 3 in the morning. A spreadsheet is clean, logical. People, not so much. That's not me being bitter. It's just the truth. I'm a data analyst, the kind of guy who can disappear into rows and formulas so thoroughly that whole evenings evaporate without me noticing. I've always been better with numbers than feelings. After the divorce last winter, though, the silence shifted. It wasn't peace anymore. It was emptiness. Rooms that once held background noise, her voice on a late phone call, the shower running, the clink of plates, were dead quiet. Too quiet. So I started staying later at the office, not because deadlines demanded it, but because it gave me something, anything, to fill the hours. Most nights I stayed well past midnight in the remote satellite office out in Forest Lake. The building emptied at 5, and after that it was just me, the glow of 2 monitors, and the faint hum of an HVAC system that seemed to breathe heavier at night. This was early July, the kind of sticky, airless night when even the insects seemed too tired to move. I'd been hunched at my desk since 5 that evening, tinkering with data models for a Thursday client presentation. By 2 in the morning, my eyes burned like sandpaper, and a knot had twisted itself deep between my shoulder blades. I stood, stretched, and realized if I didn't get something to drink, I was going to pass out right there at the keyboard. The vending machines in the building had been out of order for weeks. I thought of the little Shell station by the lake, maybe a quarter-mile down the road, just off the tree line near the old reservoir. The reservoir had dried up 2 summers ago, leaving behind a cracked basin of weeds and algae that stank when the wind carried it wrong. That gas station had always looked half abandoned, even on a bright afternoon. At night it was worse, just a faint glow through thinning pines, 2 tired old pumps standing like crooked teeth, and signage that flickered like it was barely holding on. Still, it was the only option. I grabbed my wallet and keys, told myself it'd be a 5-minute trip at most, and drove over. I pulled in beside the second pump. The canopy lights overhead buzzed with an uneven flicker, like they resented having to stay alive at this hour. The building was low and squat, its glass front streaked with grime. A faded open sign in the corner struggled to stay half-lit. When I stepped inside, the door didn't chime. Instead, it gave off that metallic buzz, something between a mosquito and a dying fluorescent bulb, the kind of sound you hear in diners that haven't been renovated since the 70s. The store was dim, a couple of overhead tubes casting yellow light that looked sick more than warm. A single cooler along the far wall hummed, steady but too loud in the stillness. No music, no radio, no clerk's voice calling a greeting. Just silence, except for a faint rhythmic beeping. I heard it the second I crossed the threshold, subtle but sharp, each tone landing the same distance apart, too measured to be random, too mechanical to ignore. It came from the back corner near the shelf of cleaning supplies. Behind the counter sat the clerk. Older guy, maybe late 50s. Wiry frame, beard shot through with gray. He held a battered paperback open in one hand, the other splayed across the counter like it had grown there. He glanced up when I walked in, eyes pale and flat, gave me the smallest nod, and went back to his book. I walked the aisles, grabbed a root beer and a protein bar, but the whole time my ears stayed locked on that beeping. It never wavered, never missed a beat. At the register, I set down my stuff, and before I could stop myself, asked, "Hey, you hear that? The beeping back there?" For just a second, the man froze. His eyes didn't move, but his whole body seemed to pause like a film caught on a frame. Then he looked at me, slow and deliberate, and said, "It's the alarm battery. Does that sometimes." His voice carried no weight, no annoyance, no reassurance, no effort. Just flat, as if he'd rehearsed the line. I nodded like I believed him, though I didn't. He rang me up in silence. I slid a bill across the counter, took my change, mumbled a thanks, and stepped back into the night. The air outside was warm, heavy, and unmoving. I opened my car door, the root beer cold in my hand, and that's when I realized something. My badge, my work ID, was gone. I checked my pockets twice, patted down the seat beside me, even dug under the empty root beer bottle on the dash, but nothing. A sharp sigh escaped me. I must have left it on the counter when I pulled my wallet out. Annoyed at myself, I slid the key back into the ignition, killed the engine, and stepped out. The moment I pushed the door open again, I felt it. Something was off. The store wasn't the same as I'd left it. It was too still, too hollow. The humming of the cooler was gone, the faint buzz of the lights too. And the clerk, he was nowhere. The counter sat bare, not a paperback, not a coffee cup, not even a pen. It was as though no one had ever been there, except the beeping, louder now, rhythmic, steady, mechanical. It filled the silence in a way that set my teeth on edge. "Hello?" My voice cracked the stillness, sharper than I intended. Nothing. I stepped cautiously toward the register. The emptiness pressed in around me, and the absence of any sign of life made the air feel thick, almost wrong. The beep drew me farther, past racks of chips, candy, half-faded bottles of ibuprofen, until I found the source, or what I thought was the source. That's when I noticed it. A door, It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. A narrow wooden door wedged between two dusty shelving units, cracked slightly open. No exit sign, no label, no knob I could see. Just there. Waiting. And the beeping, undeniably, came from behind it. Every instinct in me screamed to walk away, to leave, to get in my car, and never think about this place again. But instead, I put my hand on the edge of the door and pushed. The back room wasn't storage. It was something else. A hallway stretched out, long and dim, the linoleum curling up at the edges, exposed wires dangling like veins from the ceiling. The air smelled old, damp, stale, like an office gutted years ago and never reclaimed. My chest tightened. I stepped in anyway, and there it was, a single folding chair placed dead center in the hallway, like it had been waiting. On it, a tablet. The screen glowed, bright against the dark, and when I came close, words pulsed across it in bold white letters. Recording. Motion detected. My mouth went dry. I leaned over, forcing myself to look at the screen. The feed showed a grainy black and white image of the store's front aisle. Live. Watching me as I had walked in. Watching me now. Then I heard it. Behind me. A footstep. I turned, stomach lurching. The clerk stood in the doorway, silent, unmoving. His eyes caught mine, and he said in a voice low and steady, "You shouldn't be back here." I thought I left my badge," I stammered. My tongue felt heavy. "Didn't mean to. It's not here," he interrupted. Flat, certain, something twisted in my gut. "I didn't say I left it here," I murmured. He tilted his head, studying me with a faint smile that didn't belong on a human face. "Didn't you say you worked up the road?" Ice filled my veins. I hadn't told him that, not once. That half-smile deepened, barely there but enough to see. "We watch the ones who come in late," he said softly. "It's safer that way." I couldn't breathe. My heart thundered as I stumbled backward, words dying in my throat. Then I turned and ran. I bolted out of that store across the lot into my car. My hands shook so badly I fumbled the keys, but I got the engine started and peeled out, gravel spitting from the tires. I didn't look back until I was halfway up RG Town Loop. No headlights behind me, no shadows in the mirror. Nothing. When I finally returned to the office, the parking lot was dark, the building asleep. Except, my desk light was on. I never leave it on. Never. I walked inside slowly, every nerve raw. The air carried a faint smell I recognized instantly. Old floor cleaner, dust, the same sour tang from that Shell station. My throat closed as I reached my cubicle. And there it was. My badge, sitting neatly on my chair where I'd left it hours ago. I hadn't taken it to the gas station at all, but I had been certain, absolutely certain, I had. I stood staring at it for what felt like an hour, my pulse loud in my ears. I still don't know what I walked into that night. Maybe I never will. But I learned this much. Silence isn't always safe. Some of the quietest places hide the deepest unease. And sometimes curiosity doesn't just open doors. It walks you through ones that were never meant to be opened. I started taking long drives down the empty highways at night, treating it like a kind of therapy. It wasn't about reaching a place. It was about escaping one. Since Evan left, I'd been stuck in my childhood bedroom again, surrounded by stale air and wallpaper I'd hated since I was 15. Living with Dad wasn't a restart, it was a retreat. That claustrophobic weight was why I began slipping out after dark. No destination, no plan. Just drive until the gas tank dipped near half, then circle back home like nothing happened. That Sunday night in March was the same. I waited until Dad was asleep, then grabbed my coat around 8 and slid behind the wheel. The sky was sharp and cloudless, the air thick with damp earth. Nights like that remind you how small you are, like the world beyond the headlights is endless and forgiving. I pushed north on Route 92, rolling past shuttered farms and cabins with their windows black as stone. Pines pressed close on either side, their shadows cutting into the faded asphalt. My playlist shuffled through old folk songs I knew by heart, voices filling the silence so I didn't have to. By 9:30, the low fuel light blinked on. My chest tightened. I cursed myself for not filling up before leaving Dad's. Reluctantly, I turned off onto a smaller road and spotted the Greene County fuel stop. Its windows were dusty, the neon half dead, the whole place looking like time had given up on it. I pulled in. When I stepped out, the chill in the air carried that heavy stillness only midnight roads can hold. My phone read 9:38 p.m. Inside, everything felt slowed down, worn out. The weak jingle of the doorbell barely carried, and behind the counter stood a pale kid in a hoodie, one earbud dangling. The shelves sagged with dusty candy, limp sandwiches, gum packets no one had touched in weeks. I wandered toward the cooler, grabbed a soda I didn't want. It wasn't thirst. It was just an excuse not to go home yet. That's when I saw him. A man in his 40s maybe, tall but stiff, wrapped in a faded army jacket. His gait was uneven, a limp making him list slightly to one side. He didn't pick anything up, just drifted aisle to aisle, like he was searching for something he'd forgotten. When he stopped at the hot dog roller, he froze, eyes locked on the spinning meat as if he'd never seen food before. A tightness gathered in my throat, fear or instinct I couldn't tell. I forced myself to the counter, paid for the soda. The clerk glanced past me, then muttered, "Don't let that guy bother you," before I stepped back into the night. The lot was empty, only my car and the man's shape lingering by the payphone. I stood by my door, fumbling the keys with jittery hands. He didn't move, not even a twitch. Then I noticed the watch on his wrist, an old analog, glass cracked, the hands frozen. My eyes narrowed. 9:38, both hands locked. My stomach dropped. I checked my phone again. 9:38 p.m. Exact. My breath hitched, cold spreading through my chest. Gas cap still open, I scrambled into the driver's seat and locked the doors. He never turned, never even looked at me, but I could feel him all the same, heavy as a hand pressing into my gut. I shoved the nozzle into the tank, trying to steady my hands, forcing my breath slow. He's just another traveler, I told myself, just passing through. But the words felt thin, paper thin, against the pounding in my chest. But his presence carried weight, deliberate, heavy, almost predatory. I couldn't stop watching him. He never stepped closer, never spoke, but he stared, limp and rigid, eyes locked in that unblinking way that strips the air from your lungs. And that watch, always that broken watch. I finished pumping, shoved the nozzle back hard enough for it to clatter. That sound made him finally look at me. For the first time, his face turned. His eyes were hollow but sharp, like he knew something I didn't want to know. I didn't need to ask the time. I already knew what his mind was fixed on. I jumped into the car. Doors locked before my hands even stopped shaking. The tires squealed as I floored it out of the lot, not waiting to see if the shadows of those cracked tiles shifted behind me. By the time the highway opened ahead, my pulse was still hammering. I kept replaying him in my head, the limp dragging step, the frozen watch face at 9:38, those eyes empty, yet unbearably aware. Why was he there? Who was he waiting for? My rearview mirror showed only darkness, no sedan behind me. But I felt him, as if his breath fogged the inside of my back window, as if he was sleepwalking along the shoulder just out of sight, mile after mile. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, the limp came back. His shadow caught in each flicker of imagined streetlight, the broken clock face etched into the dark behind my eyelids. Around 2, I must have cried out because Dad tapped on my locked bathroom door. "You all right?" His voice was soft, cautious. "I'm fine, Dad," I whispered, though my throat was raw. He lingered, then shuffled away with the slow resignation of someone too old to argue with ghosts. I sat on the floor until my legs went numb. By dawn, sunlight felt almost indecent, too bright against what I'd carried back from that gas station. I dragged myself out, drank bitter coffee with Dad in silence, pretending the night had dissolved like a bad dream. By afternoon, I forced on clean clothes, walked to the coffee shop, hoping the brightness of day could unknot me. But the shadows stayed behind my eyes, long and intrusive, no matter how far the sun climbed. That night, Dad woke me again. His face was pale, his hands cautious as he held out my phone like it might burn him. "There's a voicemail," he said, voice lowered like we weren't alone. My stomach flipped. My hand shook as I snatched it from him. The timestamp glared. 9:38 p.m. My thumb hovered, useless, before I hit play. Static burst first, sharp and broken. Then came breathing, jagged, quick, too close to the microphone. And then a warped whisper, stretched and wrong. "You shouldn't watch the time so closely. It's watching you back." My whole body locked. My skin went cold. I couldn't move. Dad sat with me, his face lined, eyes darting. "Is that from last night?" I finally choked out. He nodded once. "It's from 9:38. The tears broke before I could hold them. Everything came down at once. The limp, the eyes, the phone call, that watch refusing to move. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't coincidence. It was something watching me, synced with that warped hour. I haven't driven Route 92 at night since. But even without the road, he lingers. I still feel his eyes on the inside of my skull, especially when the clocks in the house tick too loud. The stove clock shines clean now. I wipe it daily, but I never look when it hovers near 9:38. I can't. Those minutes feel like open traps waiting to snap shut. I don't check voicemail anymore. I don't sit in the dark. Dad jokes that I upended my whole life over a broken watch, a man in a filthy jacket, and a voice on the phone. Maybe I did. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined it, if grief and fear just spun me out. But then I think of that message, the way my gut dropped, the way my body knew before my mind caught up. Time isn't just numbers ticking forward. Some hours are thresholds, doors that don't always stay closed. And some people are waiting there, waiting for someone to notice. I learned something sharp that night. Not every moment passes. Some moments wait. Some moments trap. And when the clock refuses to move, you should never assume you're the only one watching. They say you'll know when you've hit rock bottom. For some people, it's divorce papers. For others, it's shaking hands and cold sweats on a bathroom floor. For me, it wasn't any of that. Not the morning I found myself curled in the back seat of my Civic with 3 unpaid parking tickets stuffed in the glove box alongside an eviction notice. Not the days I woke up tasting metal and regret. My bottom came later, after I thought I was crawling my way out. I was 2 months sober when I took the graveyard shift at Mapler Cross Gas Deli, out on the ragged edge of Columbus. The place didn't look like much. It wasn't supposed to. You only noticed it if your tank was running on fumes and every other station was closed. 3 pumps, a blinking open sign that buzzed louder than it glowed, and a deli counter we mostly kept for show. The guy before me quit mid-shift after someone puked in the beer cooler and walked out without so much as an apology. I figured I could stomach worse. My car lived out back, tucked behind the dumpster where the cameras couldn't catch it. I told my manager I was crashing with a cousin in Groveport. He didn't push. I didn't volunteer. All he wanted was the coffee brewed, shelves stocked, and for me not to collapse before sunrise. Easy enough, or so I told myself. Then came pump 3, the first night I barely noticed. A white SUV rolled in around 2 a.m., early April, still cold enough for your breath to fog, warm enough for idiots to wander in barefoot. The SUV didn't fuel up, didn't idle long, just sat there, headlights burning, engine purring steady, like a dog waiting at a door. I gave it 10 minutes before turning away. maybe GPS, maybe texting someone. In this job, you learn quick. People want gas, smokes, and silence. You don't ask questions you don't want answered. But the next night, the SUV came back. Same time, same pump, same nothing. By the fifth time, my stomach tightened the instant those headlights cut across the windows. And always, pump 3. Not 1, not 2, 3. Close enough to watch me, too far to speak. I told myself I was making stories out of shadows. My sponsor always said, "Stick to facts, April. Your brain likes drama better than truth." But one night, just past 2:10, I snapped. I pushed open the glass door and stepped into the cold. "Can I help you with something?" My voice sounded braver than I felt. Arms crossed, heart banging against my ribs like it wanted out. The window rolled halfway. He sat there, pale skin, short-cropped hair, early 40s maybe. No beard, no booze on his breath, no nervous tics, just blank, like someone had emptied him out. "You're not supposed to be here tonight," he said. Flat, calm. Then the window hummed back up. I don't scare easy anymore. Or I thought I didn't. That night I locked the doors, stared at the cameras, and didn't unclench until the sun scraped up over the trees. The next day I told my manager. "Maybe he's waiting on someone." He shrugged. "Maybe lost. Weirdos pass through here all the time." I called the non-emergency line anyway. A cruiser rolled by 2 hours later, too late. The SUV was gone. The officer leaned over the footage, but all we had was glare. Headlights bleeding across the asphalt. No plate, no decals, no reason. "He threaten you?" the cop asked, hand resting lazy on his belt. "He said I wasn't supposed to be here." The cop smirked. "Maybe you weren't." 3 days of silence followed. Just enough to make me feel foolish. Just enough for me to start breathing again. I scrubbed shelves, mopped sticky soda from tile, lingered in conversation with the nurses grabbing coffee before their night shifts. For a while, I forgot my car was my bed and my life was duct tape and AA slogans. I almost felt okay. Then, at 2:03 on the dot, he came back. I was at the register, counting crumpled singles, when the headlight swept over the windows. This time, the driver's door opened. I froze, watched him step out. One hand sunk into his jacket pocket, the other hanging loose. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at pump 3. He turned, slow, deliberate, toward the far corner of the lot. The air pump. He crouched down, unscrewed something, stayed there. No fidgeting, no glancing around, just still. I checked the clock. 17 minutes exactly. Then he stood, brushed off his knees, and climbed back into the SUV. Engine caught, headlights flared, and he was gone. I watched every second of the security feed that night, eyes glued to the monitor. The system glitched again, just one frame, between 2:18 and 2:19, a hiccup in the footage. But in that single frozen blur, his face didn't look right. Not in a horror movie way, not fangs or monster skin, just wrong. Like when a video buffer stutters and a smile stretches too wide, or eyes smear across the pixels until they don't belong to a person anymore. I whispered to myself, compression error. That's all. Cheap cameras, dust, lag. I made excuses, because the alternative left no footing. At 6:35 a.m., long after the SUV had gone, a kid pulled in. A Honda Civic, loud muffler rattling like it was about to fall off. Backward ball cap. He parked by the air pump, hopped out with this casual, tired energy only people in their 20s have. I was still half zoning out behind the counter when it happened. The bang came first, a gut punch boom that made the glass hum in its frame. I jerked upright, phone already in my hand. The kid screamed. By the time I ran out, his body was on the asphalt, writhing. His left hand was mangled, shredded down the palm like it had been fed through a grinder. Blood striped across the pavement in wet streaks, bright as chalk against blacktop. I dropped to my knees, voice cracking as I shouted into the phone. "We need an ambulance now. Mapler Cross gas, the air pump. He's bleeding bad." Later at the hospital, they said he'd lose 2 fingers. Lucky, one nurse muttered. I didn't feel lucky. When I checked the air pump myself that afternoon, my chest hollowed. The valve had been cross-threaded, deliberately, carefully, so pressure built until it gave way. That wasn't bad luck. That wasn't wear and tear. Someone had done it on purpose. The cops came again, took their notes, asked the same dull questions. See anyone tampering with equipment? I showed them the footage, showed them the glitch, the one frame where the face bent wrong. They looked at each other, then back at me. This looks altered, one said. They didn't mean the pump. They meant the video. It's not tampered with, I snapped. It's just bad frame rate. Look at the timestamps. They didn't care. One officer leaned his weight on his belt and smirked. You work nights. Sleep deprivation does things. Tricks the mind. That was the end of their concern. The next night I found the sticky note, folded, placed just beneath the register monitor where my eyes couldn't miss it. You didn't stop him. It's still yours to carry. I froze. The handwriting was mine. The looped A in carry, the hard cross on the T in stop. There was no denying it. My hand, my ink, my note. I don't remember writing it. My chest turned cold, like I'd slipped sideways out of my own body. I checked the cameras again, desperate for proof. That's when I saw it. The feed label wasn't Pump 3 anymore. It read, April repeating. I hadn't changed it. No one else had access. Still, there it was. That was the crack. The moment I stopped trusting myself, I didn't drink, didn't touch pills. But something in me fractured, splintering quiet like a windshield hit by a stone. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the hiss of escaping air, saw that distorted frame. I'd wake in the Civic, choking for breath, coat soaked in sweat, deli meat stench stuck in the fabric. I called my sponsor, left a voicemail. I'm scared. I don't know what's real anymore. No answer. I tried to quit, but I couldn't afford it. The paycheck kept me tethered. Even the parking lot felt like an anchor, like if I left, I'd float off into nothing. 3 nights later, I sat behind the counter, staring at the door without blinking. At 2:03, nothing happened. No SUV, no headlights. But the feed flickered, the label shifted again. April, watching. I lasted 4 more days. Then I packed up, wrote my notice, drove. No map, no plan, just pavement pulling me away. 2 towns over, I parked behind another gas station. Picked up odd shifts at a 24-hour diner. Eventually scraped enough to rent a room with a lock that didn't stick. I changed my number, deleted my email, untied myself from the past one knot at a time. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about him. The man in the SUV. The way his voice was steady, not cruel, just certain. You're not supposed to be here. Was it a warning, a curse, or just fact? What unsettles me most isn't the SUV or Pump 3 or the glitching camera. It's the weight I still feel in my chest, like I'm carrying something invisible but heavy. Every time I pass an air pump, I slow down. Every time I work a night shift, I check for notes. Every time I see my reflection, I look twice. The worst traumas are the quiet ones, the ones no one validates, the things that don't look like monsters but scrape reality just enough to make you doubt yourself. Pain, memory, responsibility. Some burdens aren't meant to be yours, but you'll carry them anyway until you finally decide to set them down. I used to love the quiet. The graveyard shift at Sunoco wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Just me. The hum of the fluorescents, an empty lot stretching out in front of the glass doors, and a beat-up radio tuned to those old detective dramas no one under 30 even knew existed. The voices crackled and hissed through static, and I'd listen while I stocked shelves, counted scratch-offs, and nursed gas station coffee that always tasted faintly of burnt toast. Bitter, a little stale, but familiar. I liked it that way. My name's Noah Darby. 26 now, though I spent the last year feeling frozen at 25. That's the age Nate, my twin, died. Car accident on the West Bypass, May 3rd last year. Rain slicked roads, hydroplaned into a tree. I was supposed to be with him. We'd made plans, but I picked up a shift instead. He always told me I worked too much, always teased me for it. Now I'd trade anything for one more argument about it. I rent a small room above the laundromat a couple doors down from the station. Not much. Single window, hot plate, a mattress so thin I can feel the springs through the sheet. But it's cheap, and it keeps me close to work. That was all I needed, at least until last month. It started subtle. April 30th, just past midnight. A customer walked in. Tall guy, busted denim jacket, 2 cans of Monster in his hand. He grinned and said, "Bet I'm your most exciting visitor tonight, huh?" Same rhythm, same pause, like he'd practiced the line in a mirror. Nothing unusual, except he came in again 30 minutes later. Same jacket, same drinks, same grin, same words. As if the moment was caught on a reel and someone hit repeat. I told myself I was tired. My sleep had been shot ever since Nate died. Some nights, I'd just sit on the floor of my room staring through the vent, watching the laundry spin below like it could hypnotize me into rest. I even started journaling after every shift, thinking maybe I'd just been misremembering things, that if I wrote it all down, I'd see a pattern. Maybe grief was just twisting reality the way everyone says it can. Then the cameras started doing it too. Between 12:10 and 1:10 every night, the security feeds would shutter, then roll backward for exactly 4 minutes and 14 seconds. Not scrambled, not glitching, just clean reverse, like someone pressed rewind on time itself. When I checked the recordings later, that slice of time was gone. Jump cut, neat and precise, like it had never been there. And then came the van. A white delivery truck, no logos, nothing but duct tape across the back door spelling out one word I couldn't quite read before it pulled in. Always at 12:42. Idled for 6 minutes, left. No driver, no delivery, just the low grumble of its engine fading into silence. The next morning, I called the supplier, still hoping it was a scheduling mix-up. "We don't run overnight routes anymore, not out there," the rep told me. Their voice was firm, final. I didn't argue, just hung up. Later, when I checked the feed, I watched myself step outside like I was about to confront it. But in the next blink, I was back behind the counter, staring at the monitor as the van rolled off. No memory of walking back inside. That was the night I stopped lying to myself. I wasn't fine. After that, I forced normal. Stocked the fridge, wiped down counters, smiled at regulars like nothing was wrong. But the loops kept happening. People, conversations, whole scenes replaying with eerie precision. Janine, she's been coming in since January, walked up to the counter for her usual pack of menthols and a cherry soda. She set them down gently, almost like she was afraid they'd shatter me instead of the glass. Her eyes lingered on mine, searching. "I've already asked you this," she murmured, glancing past me toward the gum rack. Same spot, same words. I gave a small laugh, forcing lightness into my voice. Maybe we're just creatures of habit, right? Her face didn't change. Her voice flattened. "No. You said that last time too." I froze. The register hummed between us, the only sound. I had no idea what to say. Janine scooped her change into her palm, but her eyes stayed locked on me like she was afraid I might shatter in front of her. She leaned in just slightly, voice dropping to a whisper. "Noah, whatever happened last year, it doesn't think you should have survived. You're stuck." And then she walked out. No goodbye, no glance back. Just gone. After that, things got worse. The gas pump alarm started chirping in the middle of the night. Not the long screech it gave when someone drove off, just a single sharp beep, like a nozzle had been lifted. Every time I checked, the lot was empty. Still, the beeping kept coming. Then one night, all the pumps shut off at once. 12:13 a.m. Dead silence. I stepped outside and the air felt heavy, pressing against me like a wet blanket. No wind, no traffic on the highway, not even the buzz of insects. Just stillness. Then pump 2 lit up. Beep, pump 4, beep, pump 7, beep, pump 3, beep. The order hit me like ice water down my spine. 2473. Nate's birthday. I don't know how long I stood there staring at those glowing numbers before my body finally obeyed me and moved. I went back inside, locked the doors, hands shaking so badly, I knocked over the candy display. The next morning, I pulled the transaction logs. That hour didn't exist. No entries, no card swipes, no cash drawer openings. Like the store had been erased. From then on, the loops tightened. Timestamps on receipts started coming out wrong. May 2022, exactly 1 year behind. My journal confirmed it. The same customers in the same order, the same weather outside, the same everything, like the night was a taped-over rerun. One shift, the radio drifted mid-show into an ad for a pizza place that had shut down 8 months earlier. The register flickered and rebooted into the old interface we'd replaced last July. The freezer roared louder than usual, and that's when I saw him. Through the glass door of the freezer aisle, behind neat rows of TV dinners and cartons of ice cream, Nate was there. Not his body, not a vision either, his reflection. He lifted his hand and waved. His face was pale, covered in a frost glaze, like he'd been standing inside the glass all this time, watching me. Smiling. Not scared, just present. I stumbled back so hard I smacked the back of my head on the cooler rack. When I blinked again, the glass had fogged over. His reflection was gone. I turned slowly, heart rattling in my chest, and saw the calendar tacked above the cigarettes. May 3rd, 2022. The day he died. That night cracked something in me. I didn't bother with the lights anymore. I sat behind the counter in the dark, eyes glued to the monitor, waiting, praying that if I just kept watching, I could catch it, stop it, change it. 12:42 a.m., the van came back. Only this time, no idling, no alarms. It just parked. The headlights cut off. I walked outside, slow, letting each breath cloud in the cold. The back doors were already open. Inside was no cargo, no shelves, just a single full-length mirror bolted upright against the frame. I leaned in, bracing for my own reflection. But it wasn't me. It was Nate. His face was pale, drawn, eyes heavy with exhaustion. This time, he wasn't smiling. He looked straight at me and mouthed the words, "You weren't supposed to take my place." And then, nothing. I blinked, and I was back inside. Behind the counter, the register screen glowing. Timestamp, 12:03 a.m. Like the night had reset. I don't work there anymore. 2 weeks ago, my manager found me curled up on the floor of the walk-in cooler, clutching a sticky note I didn't remember writing. 4 words in jagged ink. Stay out of the loop. He said I was burnt out, suggested a vacation. I laughed, actually laughed in his face, and walked out for good. The next day, I found something in my coat pocket. Nate's hospital wristband, still creased, still faintly stained, still warm. I don't know what's real anymore. I know I lived, and he didn't. And I've been moving through this life like a stand-in, like someone else's survivor. Sometimes I think the loops still play without me. Maybe someone else is caught now. Maybe they'll figure it out. Some grief doesn't fade. It replays. Loops. We carry our guilt like echoes, running the same scenes over and over in our heads, begging them to change. But reliving the past doesn't fix it. It only locks us there. The only way forward is through, not around it, not behind it. Through the pain, through the guilt, through the fact that we survived, even when we wish we hadn't. It's the only way to start living again. You don't really understand what silence feels like until you're stuck alone at 2:37 in the morning, with nothing but a dryer full of jeans tumbling in a metal drum. That was Cedar Spin Road for me. Noise without voices, light without warmth, repetition without comfort. After the breakup, I came back to my hometown. Not because I wanted to, but because I had nowhere else left to crawl to. Rent in St. Louis was a joke, and freelance graphic design doesn't exactly scream stability when your life detonates all at once. So I ended up in the spare room of my dad's old house. He's been gone 4 years now, but the place still holds the smell of his burnt coffee and dust in the air vents, like the house hasn't noticed he's not there anymore. The laundromat became my refuge, not because I gave a damn about laundry, nobody really likes it, but because I couldn't sleep. I tried everything. Prescription pills that left my tongue dry, cutting out caffeine, even leaving my phone in another room like every blog insists. None of it worked. Cedar Spin Road had its rhythm, the steady hum of machines, the clink of doors closing, the relentless buzz of fluorescent lights that never tired no matter how I did. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was something to anchor to. Then, in early October, something shifted. That night I showed up a little later than usual, 2:35 maybe, empty as always. I hauled my basket in, picked my usual machine, the 6th in the front row, and started sorting whites. That's when I saw him. A man, standing just outside the glass door, staring in. At first I thought he might be drunk, maybe waiting for a ride, but he didn't move, didn't shift from one leg to the other, didn't blink. Just stood there. 5 minutes at least. My skin prickled. I looked away for a second, literally a second, and when I looked back, he was gone. I never heard the door open, never heard it shut. I forced myself to focus. Maybe he left. Maybe I missed it. But when I turned to the detergent machine, my eyes flicked up to the corner monitor. That's when my stomach hollowed. On the screen, I was already inside. Same red hoodie, same black leggings, same green phone case balanced on the table beside me. But I wasn't just there. I was sitting in folding chair number 3. I watched myself look up, and then, God, on screen, my eyes locked right onto mine. I spun around. The chair was empty. The monitor still showed me sitting there. I left my basket where it was and bolted out into the October air, breath clouding, heart sprinting. I told myself I was overtired. Maybe it was an old recording. Maybe the system glitched. But I didn't really believe that. Not after the way she, the me, looked straight back at me. I didn't return for a few days. I washed what I could in the old sink at home and tried to bury the memory under denial. I've gotten good at that. Convincing myself something didn't happen is practically survival at this point. But insomnia doesn't care how badly you want to pretend. After 3 nights pacing the living room at 4 a.m., I caved. Back to Cedar Spin Road. Same hum, same sterile light, same half-comfort. And again, the glitch. I walked in just after 2:30, this time heading down the far aisle to switch things up, maybe trick my brain. But I made the mistake of glancing up at the monitor. There I was. Same corner camera, mounted high. But I wasn't just walking in like I thought. I was already loading machine number 9. I froze, staring. On screen, my double reached into the basket and pulled out a pair of jeans. I looked down. That exact pair was still clutched in my hands. I hadn't moved yet. Then, too soon, the screen version of me looked up just a fraction early, and our eyes locked. The jeans slipped from my hands. I turned and walked straight out without shutting the machine lid. My body was trembling when I climbed into the car. My first thought was Cody, my best friend since 7th grade. He picked up after a few rings, groggy, annoyed. "Dude, seriously, it's 3 in the morning. "Cody," I said, breathless. "Listen, something happened. At the laundromat. The cameras. He cut me off with a half yawn. You already told me this. What? This. The laundromat. The double. The weird footage. You called me about it last week. My stomach dropped. No, Cody, I didn't. Yeah, you did. His voice was sharp now, tired and final. Go to bed. Then he hung up. I set my phone down, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it. My pulse thudded in my ears. And when I glanced up into the rear view to back out, that's when I saw it. A sticky note. Pressed dead center against the mirror. Stop using my machines. That was what the sticky note said. The words should have been ridiculous, just a joke, maybe a crank message. But the worst part wasn't that it was happening. The worst part was the sudden, sick realization that it wasn't new. This wasn't the first time. I tore through my phone, scrolling through texts, emails, even voicemails. Nothing obvious. Nothing saying, hey, by the way, you've got a double hanging around the laundromat. But then I found it. A blurry photo I'd sent Cody a few nights earlier. It was of the laundromat monitor. No caption, no explanation. Timestamp, 2:44 a.m. The image was shaky, but it was clear enough. My stomach tightened. I didn't remember taking it. After that, sleep became impossible. Not that I'd been getting much before, but now the idea of closing my eyes felt dangerous, terrifying. What if I drifted off and woke up to find I wasn't me anymore? What if I wasn't even the real one to begin with? The next morning, I forced myself back to Cedar Spin Road in daylight. I told myself it would look harmless in the sun. Mrs. Clean was there, perched behind the counter with her crossword book. Gray hair knotted up. A tinny oldies station humming in the background. She'd been working there since I was a kid. Hey, Mrs. Clean, I said, trying to sound casual. Is there something wrong with the cameras? They've been glitching? She didn't look up. Just flipped her pencil, circled a word, and said flatly, You know that's not you, right? I froze. What? The woman on the monitor. Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was telling me the weather. That's not you. She's been here every night this week. I laughed nervously, waiting for her to smile to let me off the hook. She didn't. I'm the only one here at night, I said. My voice cracked a little. No. She finally glanced up, eyes sharp and certain. You're not. I check the tapes every morning. That girl gets here before you. I left without saying another word. My throat was dry the whole walk back to the car. The next night I didn't bring laundry. I brought a camera, set it on the folding table, number 2, where I had the clearest angle of the corner monitor. I pressed record, sat myself down in chair number 3, and waited. At exactly 2:37 a.m., she appeared on screen, the other me. Already seated in the chair I was sitting in, perfectly still, she raised her hand and held up 3 fingers. I blinked, and then, without thinking, 1 minute later, I raised my own hand. 3 fingers, like I was following a script someone else had written for me, one I hadn't read. I spiraled after that. I stopped leaving the house after dark, stopped talking much even to Cody. I avoided mirrors. I started recording little voice memos dated and time-stamped. This is real. You are here. Today is October 10th. This is your voice. Every morning I'd play them back, needing to hear myself to know I hadn't split. But I couldn't stay away forever. One night I drove to Cedar Spin Road. I didn't go inside. I just parked and stared through the glass. Waited. At 2:34 a.m., the automatic doors slid open on their own. No one came through. But inside, machine number 6 started running, a load of laundry spinning on its own. It wasn't me. I finally worked up the nerve to go in. The air smelled of detergent and faint mildew. No baskets, no shoes on the floor. Just that one machine running a cycle halfway through, the door warm when I touched it. I bent closer, peering into the glass. My reflection stared back at me, but wrong. It didn't move with me. My head tilted left. Hers lagged a half second behind. My hand reached forward, hers stayed still. That's when I realized I wasn't the one being copied. I was the copy. I don't go back to Cedar Spin Road anymore. I packed my laptop, shut down my freelance contracts, turned off my phone. 3 days later, I left town. Rented a cabin outside Hannibal. No mirrors, no cameras. I tell myself I'm safe. But still, I keep a towel draped over the bathroom mirror, just in case. And the dreams started. Always the same. The other me, the one who never left, folding clothes that don't belong to me. Looking up, just waiting for me to notice. Sometimes I think about that sticky note. Stop using my machines. But here's the thought I can't shake. What if I wasn't the victim? What if I was the one who stole her place? What if she was here first, and I was the mistake? What if I'm already inside? When the mind gets stretched too thin, reality ripples. And in those cracks, the things we bury claw their way out. Not every double wants to haunt you. Sometimes they're just waiting to take back what you borrowed without asking. Know yourself. Anchor yourself. Because if you don't, something else will. I didn't head out that night expecting anything weird. I just needed to breathe. I'd been holed up in my apartment in downtown Pittsburgh for hours, staring blankly at the walls, obsessively rereading the same text that had just gutted me. We need to talk, but I can't do this in person. I'm sorry. That was it. That's all Aiden had sent. My boyfriend, nearly a year together, holidays, meeting the parents, late-night talks about our future, decided to end it with a single message. No explanation, no conversation. Just silence after that. I sat there frozen, phone clutched in my hand, heart pounding like it was trying to escape. The grief hit first, heavy and sudden, but right behind it came this sharp, bitter kind of anger, like heat rising behind my eyes. Around 11:15 p.m., I grabbed a hoodie, stuffed my phone and keys into my pocket, and walked out without even brushing my hair. I needed movement, space, anything but that apartment. The night air hit me like a slap, cold, raw, sobering, but I welcomed it. Let it numb me. I didn't have a destination in mind. My feet just kind of carried me, and before I knew it, I was heading down Carson Street toward that sad little Wendy's. Yeah, that Wendy's. The one that had weirdly become my go-to place when shit fell apart. I'd been there twice before, once after my dog died, and once after I got laid off from the graphic design firm in spring. There's something weirdly comforting about fast food joints at midnight. The industrial hum, the smell of grease clinging to the air, the flicker of two bright fluorescent lights. It made the world feel less personal, less sharp, like no one expected anything from you. When I pushed open the door, the place was dead quiet. Not surprising, it was almost midnight. The bell above the door gave a lazy ding as I stepped inside, arms wrapped around myself. Only one guy stood behind the counter. Tall, wiry frame, short, frizzy curls, and a face that looked like sleep hadn't visited in days. Maybe early 20s. He offered a faint smile when he saw me, polite but hollow. "Rough night?" he asked. I blinked, caught off guard. You could say that." He gave a slow nod and tapped something into the register. "Usual burger combo? No pickles? Extra ketchup?" That stopped me. I narrowed my eyes. "Wait, how do you know that?" He shrugged, casual. "You've been here before. People notice things." The way he said it made something shift in my stomach. Not exactly threatening, just off. Like there was something behind the words I wasn't supposed to catch. "Yeah, that's fine," I said eventually. He nodded. "That'll be $9.63. I handed him a 10, avoiding eye contact, and muttered a quiet, "Thanks." I wasn't exactly in the mood for small talk. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again, softer this time. I glanced up, a little irritated now. Why does it matter? Just make the food. He didn't flinch, just handed back my change and nodded toward the window. Seat's open by the front, I'll bring it out. I didn't answer, just walked to the booth and dropped into the seat. Outside, the rain had started to pick up, light, misty. My hoodie clung damp against my arms. The front window was fogged around the edges, but I could still see the street, empty except for one guy standing at the opposite corner. He wore a black raincoat with the hood down, face tilted just enough to catch the streetlight. At first, I didn't think much of it, just another night walker. But then, he smiled, slowly, directly at me. I looked away, unsettled, counted to 5. When I glanced back, he was still staring, and then, casually, he crossed the street. I felt my stomach tighten. Without even looking around, he walked into the Wendy's and made a beeline for my booth. Didn't hesitate, didn't ask, just sat down across from me like we knew each other. "You look like you've had a hell of a night," he said, smiling faintly. I stiffened. "Do I know you?" He shook his head. "Nope, but heartbreak's written all over you, like a glow or a dim, depends on how you handle it." His voice was calm, low, almost too calm, like he was trying to lull me into something. "Let me guess. Boyfriend dumped you?" I stared at him. "How'd you know?" He gave a small shrug. "It's in your face." And despite everything, despite the weirdness of it all, I laughed. Just a little. "That obvious, huh?" "Yeah," he said, leaning back slightly. "And I get it." "Sometimes people suck," he said, leaning back against the vinyl seat. His raincoat dripped steadily onto the floor, but he didn't seem to care. I noticed he wasn't carrying anything. No phone, no wallet, not even a bag. Just there, like he belonged. There was something off about him. He was good-looking, yeah, rugged in that older, slightly weathered kind of way. Early 30s, maybe. But his eyes didn't match his voice. They looked exhausted. Not just tired, like worn down by something deep and rotting. "What's your name?" I asked, mostly out of habit, not curiosity. "Liam," he said smoothly. I didn't believe him. It felt too rehearsed, too ready. Before I could press him, the worker approached with my tray. He placed the burger combo in front of me, then glanced at Liam. His eyes lingered a beat too long, his posture tightening. "Everything okay here?" he asked carefully. Liam smiled, calm as ever. "Yeah, we're just talking." The worker didn't look away from me. His eyes searched mine like he was looking for some kind of silent signal. I'm not even sure what expression I gave him, something between confusion and fear. But it was enough to shift something in his stance. He gave a small nod and stepped away, though I could feel him still watching. As I unwrapped my burger, trying to act normal, I noticed Liam's hands on the table. They looked wrong. At first, I thought it was just dirt smeared along his fingers and knuckles, but then I realized the color was darker, thicker, red, not quite fresh, but not dry either. My heart started pounding. I kept my eyes on the food, hands steady, pretending. "You know," he said casually, "this place is part of a pattern for me." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "Every time I finish something important, Zarina, I come here, like a reward." "Finish what?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. He just leaned forward. His smile vanished. His eyes were too still. "You ever wonder what it feels like to end someone's story?" he asked. "To be the final chapter?" I went cold. What did you say?" He reached into his coat. My breath caught. Something metallic flashed. I didn't get a clear look, but I didn't need to. A knife. My chest seized. My limbs locked. Panic screamed in my brain, but my body refused to listen. He set the blade beside him on the seat, half wrapped in a dirty cloth. The tip stuck out. Sharp, dark, unmistakable. "Don't scream," he said, voice low and deadly calm, "or I'll gut you before anyone even notices." I couldn't breathe. My fingers trembled under the table. "Why me?" I whispered. He looked out the window like he didn't want to say it directly to me. "Because you're alone," he said. "And because you looked at me. Sometimes, that's all it takes." Just then the worker returned. No tray this time, just him. "Sir," he said, voice steady, "I need you to come with me." Liam didn't move. "She's not interested in company," the worker said again. "We're having a moment," Liam replied with a grin, eyes still locked on mine. I said now. This time, the worker's voice was firmer. Something shifted. Liam stood quickly. Too quickly, his movements sharp and dangerous. The knife flashed again. I shrank into the booth, heart jackhammering. But the worker didn't back down. In one fluid motion, he reached behind the counter, grabbed something, looked like a metal rod, maybe part of the mop handle, and swung. The crack was loud, sickening. The rod smashed into Liam's temple. He dropped instantly. Blood sprayed the table. I screamed finally. Backed away so fast I almost tripped over my own feet, sobbing, my hands over my mouth. The worker tossed the rod aside and yanked out his phone. "Yeah, 911. Send someone fast," he said. "She's hurt." He had a weapon. Everything blurred after that. Paramedics arrived. Police followed. They arrested Liam, barely conscious, and took me to UPMC Mercy. Turned out the blade had grazed my shoulder in the commotion. I needed stitches. They said I was lucky. The next day, the worker visited me in the hospital. He was out of uniform this time. He looked younger, softer. He smiled and handed me a coffee. "Next time," he said with a wink, "don't glare at the guy taking your order." I laughed somehow. I didn't even know I could laugh anymore. "I guess I owe you my life," I said. He shrugged. "Just doing my job. But maybe. Don't sit with strangers in fast food joints after midnight, yeah?" I nodded slowly. I never went back to that Wendy's, but I never forgot what happened. And I never, ever treated anyone like they didn't matter again. Because sometimes the person you dismiss might be the only thing standing between you and something that wants to destroy you. I never imagined I'd say this, but working the day shift at a fast food joint in Atlanta turned out to be more dangerous than any graveyard shift I ever worked. I've been at the Wendy's on Memorial Drive for just under 6 months. Name's Marcus Holloway, 28. Used to do construction before my knee gave out. Torn ligaments, the whole mess. And bills? They don't care if you're limping or laid up. So I took the next honest job I could find. Flipping burgers, wiping down sticky tables, dealing with people who treat you like a vending machine. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the lights on. People always assume the day shift is easier. Fewer drunks, less shady energy, and yeah, sunlight gives the illusion that things are safer. But what they don't realize is, the real monsters, the ones you should be scared of, they walk around just fine in the daylight. That Tuesday felt normal, right up until it didn't. I clocked in at 11 a.m., clipped on my name tag, still had a mustard stain from Monday, and jumped in to help Clarissa transition from breakfast to lunch. Clarissa's been here longer than some of the grills. Late 40s, sharp tongue, doesn't suffer fools. We were joking around, talking trash about Reggie, our new manager. The guy couldn't find the reset button on the soda machine if you stapled a map to his forehead. And then, something shifted. It wasn't anything loud or dramatic, just a feeling, like that electric silence before a thunderstorm rolls in. My skin prickled. I glanced up at the clock, 1:15 p.m. The slow stretch, where the lunch rush dies down and you start deep cleaning everything. I just finished wiping down the lobby tables. Clarissa was in the back, restocking sauce packets. That's when the front door creaked open. Not the usual cheerful ding. This was different. A long, low groan like the hinges hadn't moved in years. I looked up. A woman walked in first, early 30s I'd guess, petite, with this oversized gray hoodie swallowing her up. She carried a duffel bag so heavy it pulled her whole frame down. Something about her, her eyes, immediately set me on edge. She was scanning the room, fast, like a trapped animal hunting for exits. Then he walked in behind her. Tall, had to be at least 6'3". Lean but with this wired tension, like he could explode or bolt any second. Military vibe, or maybe just someone who's been in too many fights. But it was his face that stopped me. Jaw clenched so tight it looked painful, and eyes locked on her like she was prey. They didn't look like a couple grabbing lunch. They looked like a story I didn't want to be part of. She stepped up to the counter, shoulders curled inward, like she was bracing for a hit. Her voice came out soft, almost apologetic. "Key combo 3, please, medium fries, small soda," he snapped. "What did I tell you?" His voice cracked the air. "Big fries. Always big fries." Her whole body flinched. Her voice cracked. I didn't bring enough. You said I could get what we agreed." He stepped in close, towering over her, crowding her space. "You're always screwing things up," he spat. "Can't even handle this. You're useless." It wasn't just what he said. It was how. Each word dripping with disgust, like he was looking at something rotten. I felt my gut tighten. I cleared my throat, heart pounding. "Sir," I said, trying to stay calm, "there's no need to—" Before I could finish, he lunged over the counter and shoved me. Hard. I flew back, crashing into the tile wall behind me. My shoulder hit something sharp, the metal corner of the fire extinguisher mount maybe, and pain shot down my arm like lightning. I staggered forward, disoriented. Clarissa peeked around from the back, eyes wide and scared. "Marcus, you good?" The woman looked like she might collapse right there. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Please don't start. Everyone's watching. You're embarrassing me." He didn't even glance at her when he said it. Just stared past her like she wasn't there. "You embarrassed yourself the second you opened your damn mouth." I stepped in, trying to diffuse whatever the hell this was turning into. My hands were up, palms out, voice steady. "You gotta leave, man. Right now, before someone gets hurt." But he wasn't hearing anything. He grabbed me by the collar and slammed me into the register. My skull bounced off the plastic and metal. A burst of white light exploded behind my eyes. Then the punches came. Fast, mean, targeted. One to the ribs, winding me. Another cracked into my jaw. My knees buckled. The lobby froze. Not a single person moved. It was like I'd dropped into a bad dream, one where everyone else was just shadows watching through fogged glass. Clarissa's voice broke through, yelling from the back, panicked and high-pitched. "Somebody call 911!" But the words got lost in the chaos. He hit me again, hard enough to knock me off my feet. I slid across the tile, gasping, couldn't even get a full breath in. Pain was blooming everywhere, sharp in the ribs, dull in the skull. My ears rang. The woman screamed, "Stop, please, you're hurting him." Her voice cracked under the weight of it. He didn't even flinch. Spit flying from his mouth, fists clenched so tight his knuckles looked bone white. His face was flushed, more than angry, like something inside had snapped. He grabbed the metal napkin dispenser from the counter and hurled it. It crashed against the wall with a deafening clang, scattering napkins across the floor like feathers. That finally did it. Broke the spell. Chairs screeched back, a kid screamed, tables flipped, people rushed for the door. I started crawling toward the kitchen, dragging my body inch by inch. My lungs were burning, and the whole room tilted sideways every time I moved. That's when I saw it, a kitchen knife lying on the floor. Looked like it had fallen during the commotion. I reached for it, slow and desperate. Too late. He saw it too. He snatched it up before I could even get close. And when he turned back toward me, there was nothing left in his eyes. No logic, no control. Just blank, hollow rage. like he'd unplugged from reality completely. Clarissa's scream tore through the air. "He's got a knife!" That's when the crowd surged. Customers poured out, finally shaken from their shock. I heard someone yell into their phone, another scream by the soda machine, then a crackling voice through the store's PA. Someone had finally called the cops. The woman tried to grab his arm, sobbing now. "Please don't. Please, just stop." He shoved her like she was weightless. She hit the floor and skidded across the tiles, arms curling protectively around her ribs. He turned to me again, knife low in his grip like he knew how to use it. "Still want to be a hero, huh?" he snarled. "Let's see how brave you are now." I was backed into the corner near the soda fountain, nowhere to run, nothing to shield myself with. My hands went up, trembling, useless. My heartbeat was a war drum in my ears, and then, bang. The front door flew open. 2 officers stormed in, weapons raised. "Drop the knife!" He froze for half a second, knife still up, eyes flicking between them and me. The woman cried out from the floor, her voice raw and terrified. "Don't do it, please." But he didn't listen. His wrist twitched, blade rising. That's when one of the cops lunged, tackled him from behind, full body. The knife flew from his grip and skidded across the floor. Even then, he kept fighting, thrashing, cursing, snarling like an animal cornered. It took 2 more officers to bring him down, pin him, cuff him, and then finally it was over. They dragged him out screaming and kicking, eyes wild. I slid down the wall, too weak to stand. My vision swam, my lip was split, my jaw throbbed, and every breath stabbed me from the inside. One of my eyes was already swelling shut. The woman was curled up in the corner, sobbing into her hands. An officer knelt beside me. "You all right, son?" I wanted to laugh, or scream, or just pass out. Instead, I croaked, "Do I look all right?" He gave a quiet nod. "You're alive. That's what counts." Later, I found out the guy was high on some kind of synthetic meth, worse than bath salts, totally out of his mind. He'd been arrested before, multiple times. Domestic violence, assault, all of it. I didn't wait for another shift. Quit the next morning. Packed my locker, turned in my uniform, and walked out. Never looked back. But every time I drive past that Wendy's, my stomach knots up like a fist. People say fast food jobs are easy, safe. No real danger. They don't know the half of it. Because that day I learned something I'll never forget. You don't have to work nights to meet a monster. Sometimes, they show up for lunch. My name's Eric Shaw, and I used to think nothing could shake me. Grease fires, belligerent drunks pounding on the drive-through window, even a rat once dragging a fry like it was a prize. I'd been closing at the Wendy's in Topeka for just over 6 months. It was always the same routine. Me, a mop, and some classic rock blasting in one ear to make the silence tolerable. It was just after 11:30 that night. I was in the back swiping at a sticky mess near the fryer, strawberry syrup, thick and bright as blood, pooling from the damn frosty machine again. Probably Alana's fault. She rushed everything. Always did. I had one earbud in, the other hanging loose, brushing against my collarbone. The store was dead quiet, that kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just wrong. The overhead lights flickered just once. A quick blink. They'd been doing that for days, so I didn't think twice, didn't hear the front door open, didn't hear the register chime, didn't even notice the scream at first. Population. I paused mid-mop. It sounded warped, like a glitch in my music. Maybe the end of the track? Then again, louder this time. Population, population. The second time it was different, too crisp, too real. Not for my playlist. I froze, the mop still in my grip, angled awkwardly mid-stroke. My heart stuttered, then surged into overdrive. My breath caught, shallow and sharp. A familiar chill washed over me, the same cold I felt the night my older brother got shot in our driveway 5 years ago. That feeling, that something unspeakable was already happening and I was too late to stop it. Then the sound. Sharp, violent, unmistakable. Gunshots. Inside our Wendy's. I yanked the last earbud out and held still, breath tight in my lungs. Silence. Thick and unnatural. I crept forward, inch by inch, shoes sticking faintly to the syrupy floor. The fryer hummed in the background, too loud now. My throat felt tight like it was trying to close up on me. I eased toward the kitchen's edge and peeked around the corner. My stomach turned. I saw them all. Alana, Greg, Mark, and Rhonda, lined up on their knees in the lobby, hands locked behind their heads. Their faces looked wrong, off, like masks molded from fear, barely human anymore. Two others, customers maybe, were already face down on the tile, unmoving. Blood had pooled beneath them, dark and slow, soaking into the grout. And standing over them was a man. Tall, pale, hoodie zipped halfway, jeans stiff like he'd slept in them. His beard was scruffy, not messy. He had the look of someone who didn't care how long this had taken to plan. He held the pistol with both hands, like someone who'd done this before. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't rushing, just calm, controlled. He walked to Greg. Poor kid had only been with us a week. Still wore his "Hi, I'm training" badge like a joke that hadn't gotten old yet. I watched, frozen, helpless, as the man raised the gun. A shot rang out. Greg crumpled like someone had cut his strings. Just folded, eyes wide and glassy before he even hit the ground. My knees went. I caught myself on a shelf. Metal clanged under my elbow. Loud. Too loud. He heard it. I panicked. Instinct kicked in. I turned and sprinted, feet slipping a little, shoving myself through the double doors into the back stockroom. I dove behind a stack of cardboard boxes near the triple sink, heart jackhammering against my ribs. The air back there felt thick, hard to swallow. My hands were soaked, sweat, maybe something else. My mouth felt like it was full of sand. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Deliberate. Heavy. Boots pressing into the syrupy mess I hadn't finished cleaning. Closer. Each step felt like it vibrated through the floor. He was muttering now. Low, rambling nonsense. Words that didn't connect. Words I couldn't understand. And he was getting closer. Angry. Or maybe just confused. That's what I felt in his footsteps. Slow, deliberate, like he wasn't sure what he was hearing but was ready to kill it anyway. I heard the door creak open, soft but sharp in the silence. I didn't breathe. The air sat heavy in my chest like wet concrete. He moved slowly, scanning. His boot landed right in front of the box I was crouched behind. Through a narrow slit between the cardboard, I saw blood smeared across the laces. Fresh, thick. My grip tightened around the mop handle until my knuckles turned white. It was all I had. A stick with wet string. But in that moment, it felt like a sword, a final line between me and death. He crouched slightly, tilting his head like he heard something. Our eyes nearly met, almost. And then, crash. Something toppled across the room, hard, loud. The man spun toward the sound, jerking the gun in that direction. And out of the shadows, Marcus lunged. I didn't even know he was still alive. He slammed into the guy with a desperate grunt, hands clawing at the gun like a wild animal. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs, thrashing, grunting, fighting like it was the only thing keeping the world from ending. 2 shots rang out quick and violent. I winced. Marcus gasped, clutching his side. He tried to crawl backward, blood leaking through his fingers. His eyes locked on something behind me. Maybe hope. Another shot. His body jerked once, then stilled. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My body betrayed me, frozen, drenched in sweat. My face was soaked, my limbs numb. I couldn't move. Then I heard boots again. Another man stepped in, shorter than the first, but heavier. Thick arms, bald head, heavy chain around his neck that clinked as he walked. His face was twisted with frustration, not panic, like this was taking too long. "Finish checking," he barked. "Make sure no one's breathing." My heart dropped into my stomach. Panic snapped me into motion. I slid backward into the cabinet beneath the industrial sink. Barely fit. Knees crushed to my chest. The smell of bleach burned my nostrils. I held still, clamped my mouth shut, tried not to make a sound. The cabinet door yanked open. Before I could think, I exploded outward. Thrust the door into the gunman's face, knocking him off balance. He stumbled, crashing into the shelves behind him. Supplies and metal clattered everywhere. I launched at him with everything I had. No plan, just fear and fists. He hit me in the ribs, hard. Pain shot through me. I swung wildly, caught a broom and smashed it into his side. He grabbed my neck, squeezing, pushing me backward. My vision tunneled. I reached for anything. My hand found a shard of broken plastic, maybe from a bottle. I jammed it into his side once, twice, 3 times. He screamed, "Let go." I collapsed forward, gasping. Blood on my shirt, not mine. I scrambled to my feet, coughing, vision spinning, and bolted. Didn't get far. The second guy, chain neck, was already at the hallway exit, gun drawn, face hard and focused. He raised it, fired. The shot missed, but barely. I ducked, turned, ran the other way as fast as I could. I stumbled into a narrow room, an old filing space with dusty shelves and a metal desk. I slammed the door behind me, shoved a chair under the knob. My lungs were heaving, my whole body shaking. Boom! The door jolted. A gunshot blasted through the lock, splinters flying. No time. I climbed on the desk, pushed open a ceiling tile, and pulled myself into the crawl space above. Dust filled my throat. It was hot, dark, claustrophobic. I dragged myself forward on my elbows, praying, just muttering desperate promises to anything out there willing to listen. I don't know how long I crawled. Maybe half a minute, maybe a decade. But then I found an opening. Dropped down into another hallway, barefoot and trembling. The emergency exit was just ahead. I shoved it open and stumbled out into the night. Cold Kansas air slapped my face. I was shaking, barefoot, blood-smeared, wild-eyed, but I was alive. A car screeched to a stop on the road. A man jumped out. I collapsed at his feet, babbling, begging, pleading for help. The police came fast. Within minutes. They found the first shooter, barely alive, bleeding out on the storeroom floor. The second guy, he got away, slipped into the night like a shadow. They said it was a robbery, just a robbery. All those people I joked with, shared fries with, closed with, gone. For a drawer of cash, for nothing. Only 2 of us made it, me and Alana. She'd survived by going still, playing dead. Lucky they didn't check. Sometimes I still hear Marcus gasping, still see Greg fall, still feel the warmth of someone else's blood soaking into my shirt. I haven't gone back to work, don't know if I ever will, but I'm alive. Now I live differently. I notice things, I cherish things, stupid things. A cone from 7-Eleven, a late-night walk, a breeze that doesn't carry screams. Silence used to mean boredom. Now it means I'm still breathing, and that's enough. I never thought delivering fast food could get you killed, or worse. When I started working the night shift at the Wendy's on Jefferson Street in Louisville, Kentucky, I wasn't chasing dreams or hoping to climb some corporate ladder. I just needed rent money. I was 24, flat broke, and running on fumes, physically, financially, and emotionally. By day, I was doing DoorDash runs all over the city. At night, I clocked in at Wendy's from 6 p.m. till sometimes 2, 3 in the morning. The double grind was hell. My feet were blistered, my knuckles burned from fryer oil, and I had a constant film of grease in my pores that no amount of scrubbing could get out. The worst part? That low, endless hum of the fryers. It crawled into your bones. Still, it was work. And in my world, steady work was a miracle. Carl was our manager. Gruff guy with a permanent limp and a nicotine patch always slapped on the side of his neck like a badge he forgot to take off. He wasn't the talkative type unless it was to bark at us or ramble about some obscure punk band none of us had ever heard of. But one night, he pulled me aside near the back door, where the air always smelled like mop water, old fryer grease, and something vaguely rotten. Maybe lettuce, maybe death. He lit a cigarette, even though we weren't supposed to smoke back there. "You want to make real money?" he asked, eyes narrowed against the smoke. "Always," I said, wiping fry salt off my apron. He handed me a laminated card, edges worn, with a number scribbled in thick Sharpie. "Late-night deliveries, Fridays and Saturdays. Cash tips only. The store gets a cut, you keep the rest," he said, voice low like he was passing on a secret. "But you gotta be cool going out to some weird-ass places." "Weird how?" He scratched behind his ear and smirked. "Ash Hollow, Riverbend Motel. Some of them long-ass gravel driveways off I-64. Real hillbilly cryptid shit." He chuckled, taking a drag. "But drunk people tip better than God." I took the card. I didn't hesitate. Groceries, gas, and maybe a night without ramen noodles? Count me in. The first few weekends were easy. Some stoned college kids who forgot they already ordered. A lonely old man who gave me a 10 just for showing up with a baked potato. A woman at the Riverbend who opened the door in nothing but a silk robe and asked me if I liked jazz while Billie Holiday played in the background. Weird? Yeah. Creepy? Not really. That changed the last Saturday of October. The whole shift was off from the start. The drive-through speaker kept glitching, looping static like a dying robot. A kid threw up in the dining room. Carl looked like death warmed over, sunken eyes, twitchy hands. He kept staring at the security monitors like he was watching a different world play out in black and white. Close to midnight, Marcy, the girl working drive-through, walked up holding a paper bag. She looked uneasy. "One spicy chicken combo, double fries, chocolate frosty," she said, her eyes flicking toward Carl's office. "Name's Mara V. Address is way out past Ash Hollow." I raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that past the Shell station? The one with the broken sign?" She nodded, lowering her voice. "Way past it. You sure you want to take it? I can cancel." Before I could answer, Carl stepped out of his office like he'd been waiting. His gaze locked on the bag, then on me. "If you're headed to Ash Hollow, don't go past the old reservoir," he said flatly. "Why not?" He paused. Something flickered behind his eyes. "GPS gets screwy. People get lost," he muttered. "Don't go past it." That was all he said. I was too tired to argue, too broke to care. I grabbed the bag and headed out. My truck, a beat-up Tacoma with rust eating through the wheel wells, groaned to life after a couple of tries. I punched the address into Google Maps and cranked the heat. It was colder than it should have been for late October, and the fog was thick, like sheets of cotton drifting low and slow, smothering everything in sight. As I left the city behind, the houses grew sparse, traded out for long stretches of tree-lined road that looked more like tunnels than streets. Streetlights disappeared, swallowed by fog that rolled in thick and low, muting the world outside my windshield. My headlights felt useless, smearing across the mist like paint on wet glass. Still, I wasn't scared. Tired? Yeah. But I'd driven weirder routes for less. Then the radio fizzled into static. I figured it was a dead zone, common out this far, but every time I tried switching stations, it was the same. Garbled fuzz, then silence, like something was pressing down on the signal. I glanced at the GPS. The map glitched, froze for a second, then jumped. The road I was on vanished from the screen. Just gray, nothingness. Great, I muttered, forcing a laugh, hoping that saying it out loud would make the tension in my chest ease. That's when I saw her, a tall woman, standing dead center in the road. She wasn't moving, no wave for help, no reaction, just standing. I slammed the brakes. The truck jerked to a stop so hard the seatbelt caught my chest. I leaned out the window, heart thumping. "Hey, you okay?" She didn't answer, just tilted her head to the side, slowly, like a puppet with tangled strings. I reached for my phone, hands shaking. Marcy, Carl, hell, even 911, anyone. But before I could unlock it, she was gone. Not walked away, not ran, gone. I floored it. The road veered hard left, then snapped right. The trees leaned in unnaturally close, like they were craning their necks to watch me pass. My GPS was done, screen frozen mid-glitch. I was driving blind. Then the phone rang. No caller ID. I answered, voice tight. "Hello?" A man's voice, low, cracked like it had been dry for years. "Don't go any further. Turn off the engine, get out of the truck." "What? Who the hell is this?" "Get out now. Don't ask questions, don't look back." "I'm calling the cops." "You already passed her," he said, and his voice broke. "If you don't move now, she's going to feed." I don't know why I listened. Something in his tone. It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a man already mourning. I opened the door and stepped out. Cold slapped me like a hand to the face. Wet, bone-deep cold. The air stank, metallic and sweet, like rust and rot. Then, thud. Something landed on my truck roof. Another thud. I spun around. She was on the hood, slamming a deer carcass against the windshield over and over like she was trying to break through or make it bleed. The deer was shredded, ribs exposed, hooves limp, blood smeared in wide arcs, her arms, too long, her knees bent the wrong way. And her face, God, no face at all. Just smooth, pale skin stretched tight across bone, no mouth, no eyes, nothing. I think I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying on a dusty cot inside a cabin. Old, cracked wood, cobwebs in the corners, a fire crackled in the hearth. I wasn't alone. A man stood by the window, face hidden in shadow. "You looked back," he said quietly. "Who are you?" "Nobody," he said. "Just someone who made the same mistake." He handed me a bowl of soup. I drank it, too stunned to speak. He didn't say much after that. Wouldn't tell me where we were. Just said, "Wait for morning." When the sun came up, he was gone. So was my truck. I walked until I found a gas station, borrowed a phone, called Carl. He acted like I was crazy, said I'd never left, said I'd clocked out hours ago and gone home. Marcy swore there was no order for anyone named Mara V. No bag, no delivery, no record. But I remembered. The static, the cold, her. And now, every time the fog rolls in on Jefferson Street, I stay inside. Because once you see her, really see her, she remembers you. And she's always hungry. Weeks passed. I tried to go back to normal, clock in, flip patties, pretend like I hadn't seen something that cracked reality in half. But normal's a joke after that. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her. Not the full thing, just hints. A shadow near the freezer, a flicker in the drive-through cam feed, a smear of dark something on the frosty machine that no one else noticed. Then one night, I found something in my locker, a laminated card. The same one Carl gave me, same worn edges, same number, but this time no name, just one message in shaky red ink. She's still hungry. I quit the next day, packed up, moved across town, swore off Wendy's forever. But last night I got a DoorDash ping. Spicy chicken combo, double fries, chocolate frosty. Delivery address, Ash Hollow. The app wouldn't let me decline. And this time, there was no reservoir to turn back at. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. One of those dumb, tired decisions you make when your brain's fogged up and your stomach's louder than your common sense. Ellie, my girlfriend, and I had just left a small house party on the edge of Greenwood, Indiana. It was a little after 11:15 p.m., and we were both wiped out and snapping at each other over nothing. Typical end-of-the-night stuff. We hadn't eaten since lunch, and the second we got into the car, it hit us both. Hunger, heavy and sharp. Ellie rubbed her hands together and muttered, "I'd kill for fries. Something greasy? Right now." I laughed, even though I felt like I could barely keep my eyes open. Only thing open this late's probably Wendy's. You good with that? She didn't even hesitate. God, yes, I don't care if it's fresh. Just make it hot. The I-65 exit wasn't far, and sure enough, there it was. A lonely Wendy's sitting off Count Line Road, still lit up with a flickering open sign in the window. That should have been a red flag. Most places in that area shut down early during the week, but I figured maybe it was one of those rare 24-hour ones. Didn't question it too hard. The parking lot was almost empty. One other car, a dark red SUV, sat in the corner, its windows fogged, probably an employee's. "This place looks dead," I mumbled, stepping out into the cool night air. "Even better," Ellie replied, tugging her hoodie tighter. No lines. We walked up to the door, the motion sensor barely responding as we pushed in, and right away, it felt off. The air inside was heavy, too still. It smelled like overused fryer oil mixed with something sour and faintly chemical, like old mop water that hadn't been changed in weeks. The overhead fluorescents buzzed in a constant grating hum, casting this pale, washed-out light across the scuffed linoleum. No music. No customers. Just the soft hum of a distant fan coming from the back. Behind the counter stood a man, mid to late 40s, maybe older. Tall but disturbingly thin, like his body hadn't caught up with adulthood. His limbs looked stretched out as if someone had pulled him too hard from both ends. He wore the standard Wendy's uniform, but the sleeves were short, leaving his wrists exposed. Bony, almost skeletal. A graying beard clung to his jawline like it didn't want to be there. And then his eyes. Empty. Wide. Glassy. Unblinking. Like he'd been staring at something way too long and forgot how to stop. "Evening," I said, keeping my voice light. He didn't answer. Just raised one eyebrow slightly. No shift in expression, no words. I nudged Ellie with my elbow. "Go hit the restroom if you want, I'll order." She nodded and slipped past me, the soles of her shoes squeaking faintly as she crossed the sticky floor. I turned back to the guy. "Can I get a number 6? Spicy, with a Coke?" Still nothing from him. He pressed a few buttons on the register without glancing down. The movement was robotic, no wasted motion. Then he held out his hand for my card. His fingers were cold, cold enough that I flinched a little as I passed it over. He swiped it, then pointed silently behind me. "No receipt?" I asked. He shook his head once, slow. I tried to play it off, gave a half-hearted chuckle. "All right, man. Guess I'll wait." And so I stood there, in silence. The guy didn't move from behind the counter, just stared, eyes locked on me, unblinking. The longer I stood there, the more I felt like I wasn't being looked at. I was being watched, studied, like he was trying to figure out how I worked. It started to get to me. Then I realized Ellie hadn't come back yet. I checked my phone. 11:38 p.m. She'd been gone over 10 minutes. I turned and called down the dim hallway toward the restrooms. "Ellie?" No response. Behind me, I could feel the guy's eyes still locked on the back of my head. I glanced at him. He blinked slowly. Just once. Like watching a spider crawl across a window. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just gonna check on her real quick." He didn't respond. Didn't move. I headed toward the hallway. The women's restroom door was closed. No sounds coming from inside. I knocked gently. "Elle, you okay?" Nothing. I leaned down, noticing a flicker of light leaking from underneath. Not the usual cold white from a fluorescent fixture, but strange. A pulsing, color-shifting glow. Blue, then red, then green. Soft and rhythmic, like the glow of a TV stuck on a broken channel. "Ellie?" My voice wavered. Still no answer. My throat went dry. Something was wrong. I grabbed the door handle and slowly pushed it open. The smell hit first: dust, mildew, and something electrical, like ozone. The bathroom was dark except for the glow of a boxy, old-school TV placed directly on the floor in the corner. It looked like it had been ripped out of someone's basement in the 90s. Definitely not something you'd expect in a fast food bathroom in 2024. The screen was alive with static and flickering images, fast, chaotic, spirals, sharp cuts of abstract shapes, foreign letters that made my head hurt just looking at them. And there was Ellie. She stood motionless in front of the screen, staring dead into it. Her body completely still, arms hanging limp by her sides. Her shoulders weren't tense. She looked peaceful, almost, like she was asleep with her eyes open. Ellie. My voice cracked. She didn't turn, didn't blink, didn't move at all. Too relaxed, like she was asleep standing up. I stepped inside. The flickering light from the screen pulsed against the grimy tile floor, casting erratic shadows that danced along the cracked mirror and stained walls. The tiny TV buzzed with static, but underneath that noise was something else. A low, droning hum that vibrated in my chest, steady and unnatural, almost like a growl that had forgotten how to end. "Ellie," I said again, firmer this time, and reached out to touch her arm. The second my fingers brushed her skin, she jolted. Just a small twitch, but enough to startle me. Her eyes fluttered like she'd just woken from a deep sleep. Her lips parted as if she meant to speak, but nothing came out. She swayed, off balance, and slowly turned toward me. Her pupils were dilated, unfocused, trying to land on my face. Hey, I said, catching her elbow. "You okay?" She shook her head, dazed. I don't know. What was I doing? You tell me." She blinked hard and looked past me, her eyes locked on the now muted screen. "I think I was watching something." "No kidding," I muttered, casting a glance at the bizarre images still flickering. My stomach twisted. I crouched and yanked the plug from the wall. The screen snapped off instantly, and the room plunged into shadow. The sudden silence felt like a weight. I could hear both of us breathing. "Come on," I said, grabbing her hand. "We're getting out of here." We stepped back into the hallway, and immediately froze. Something had changed. The fluorescent lights overhead had dimmed. The white glow now tinted a murky amber. The buzzing sound from earlier was louder, harsher. It crackled like electricity in the air before a storm. The walls felt closer somehow, like the place was breathing. The man at the counter was gone. "Let's move," I whispered. We walked fast, not running, but close. I kept Ellie behind me, my eyes scanning the empty dining area. Then we reached the door, locked. I rattled it hard. Nothing. Didn't budge, no give, no sound. Just the heavy clunk of metal that wasn't supposed to be locked from the inside. "What the hell?" I hissed, checking the latch, then the windows. Ellie was breathing harder now, one hand clutched around the back of my jacket. "This doesn't make sense," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saw him, right? The guy behind the counter?" "I saw him. He just stared. He didn't talk, didn't do anything." A sharp clatter rang out from the kitchen. We both flinched. Then silence. Then something else, wet, dragging, followed by a low scrape, like something heavy being pulled slowly across the tile floor. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, not clumsy or panicked, heavy, measured, coming closer. We backed away, every instinct screaming to run. I grabbed my phone and tried calling 911. No signal. I turned to Ellie. "Back, bathroom's window." We bolted down the hall, slammed through the restroom door, and Ellie scrambled onto the toilet, reaching for the narrow window above. "Hurry!" she hissed, pushing it open. Thank God it wasn't painted shut. She twisted, grunted, and hauled her upper body through. I jumped up after her, shoving my hands against the frame and squeezing through. My hoodie caught on something, ripped slightly, and then my foot kicked off the wall just as I heard it. The creak of the bathroom door opening behind me. I didn't look. Didn't need to. Whatever it was, it had waited too long. And now it was here. I tumbled out beside Ellie into the cool night air. We didn't pause. We ran. Across the cracked back lot, past the dumpster, straight into the trees at the edge of the property. Neither of us looked back. We kept running until we hit a gas station a quarter mile down the road. Our phones lit up with signal the second we stepped inside. I called the cops. Ellie was shaking so bad she couldn't even speak. 20 minutes later, a cruiser pulled up. The officer listened, but I could tell by his face. He didn't buy it. Still, he agreed to check it out. When he came back 10 minutes later, his face had changed, pale, tight around the mouth. "There's nothing inside," he said. "Doors were unlocked. Place looks like it's been abandoned for months. No staff, no power, no food." "What about the red SUV?" I asked. He shook his head. "No cars in the lot." I tried to explain again, about the man, the locked door, the TV in the restroom, the screen, but his eyes glazed over. The look people give you when they think you're high or crazy. "I'll file a report," he said. "But honestly, probably some kids broke in, pulled a prank. You two should head home. Get some rest." We did. But rest didn't come easy. Since that night, I've driven past that Wendy's 3 times. It looks the same every time. Windows boarded up, weeds strangling the parking lot, graffiti covering the walls. The open sign is gone. Just a dark shell now. I asked around. A guy at the gas station said it had been closed for months. Something about a fire in the kitchen. Said it never reopened. Said the night shift manager, a guy named Leonard, went missing just before it shut down. They never found him. Ellie still wakes up sometimes in a cold sweat. She mumbles about the lights, about the hum. She doesn't remember everything, but enough to make her flinch when we pass old fast food joints at night. I started unplugging the TV before bed, and I keep my phone on airplane mode now. I don't know what really happened that night, but I know this. We weren't supposed to be there, and something knew it. I never thought I'd leave behind the sticky warmth of Tampa for the cold, fast-paced grind of New York City. But when my dad, Paul Hammond, finally found what he called the spot, a property in Brooklyn perfect for his lifelong dream of running a family-owned bakery, we packed our lives into a U-Haul and left Florida behind without a second thought. Dad's always been a hands-on kind of guy. Baking, building, fixing. He needed to stay busy, always in motion. Back home, we had a small pastry shop just off a sleepy road in a town most people couldn't find on a map. We had our regulars, a handful of loyal customers, but the shop never made enough to feel secure. I'd just graduated from Hillsborough Community College with a degree in business, hoping one day I could help turn Dad's dream into something bigger. And suddenly, bigger was right in front of us. The building we bought was off. That's the only way I can explain it now. A short, red brick place wedged between a dusty liquor store and a grimy laundromat. The front had these big glass windows, the kind you'd picture for a boutique, still smudged with old decals from whoever ran it last. Inside, the layout was basic, front for displays and customers, back for the kitchen, where heavy stainless steel counters and an industrial walk-in freezer waited, silent and humming. Out back, a narrow alley and a service door, its hinges corroded with rust like it hadn't been touched in years. Nothing about it screamed, "Dream come true." But the price? It was almost too good. Cheaper than anything else in the area by a wide margin. We joked about it being haunted, laughing then, but never really shaking the unease. Still, we moved in with open hearts and cautious optimism. During renovations, only Dad stayed up in the city. He refused to waste money on hotels, so he camped out in the back kitchen on a folding cot, claiming it was like an adventure. Mom and I stayed behind in Tampa, closing up shop and tying off the last of the bills. When the bakery was finally ready, walls freshly painted, counters gleaming, and that sweet warm smell of baked bread wafting through every corner, we made the move together. We named it Maple and Rye. It felt right, simple, comforting. And to our surprise, the locals took to it fast. From day one, we had people lining up. Folks were raving about our lemon scones, and my mom's apple cinnamon loaf sold out by noon every day. By the end of the first week, we were struggling to keep up with demand. It was more than we'd hoped for, almost surreal. But with that success came new pressure. Custom cakes, catering, late-night prep for early deliveries. My parents were both nearing 70, and as much as they loved the hustle, I saw it wearing them down. That's when I posted a job ad and met Millie Carter. She was a second-year culinary student at Kingsborough Community College. Afternoon classes, looking for night work. Her resume was brief, but solid. Clean, sharp. She seemed serious but kind, with a quiet, creative energy I liked right away. We hired her on the spot. Millie took the late shift, from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., helping with prep and baking. Most nights I stayed with her, especially when things got hectic. We clicked pretty quickly. She was funny, asked all the right questions, and had a way of modernizing my mom's old-school recipes without losing their heart. But then, 2 weeks in, she vanished. No show for her shift, no call, no text, nothing. At first I assumed it was something minor, maybe finals or a family thing she forgot to mention, but after 2 more missed shifts and no word, I started to get this tight, cold knot in my gut. I knew where she lived, just a few blocks away. That evening, I walked over. Her building was old, the kind of place that once had charm but had long since been forgotten. Faded yellow bricks, chipped window frames, iron stair rails that creaked with every step. When I knocked, the door opened just a sliver. Millie peeked out. Her eyes met mine, and she froze. Wide. Haunted. Like she'd seen something she couldn't unsee. I barely got out. "Hey, are you okay?" before Millie slammed the door shut in my face. "Millie," I called, knocking again, softer this time. "Please, just tell me what happened." For a long moment, nothing. Then, the door creaked open a few inches. Her eyes peeked through the gap, hollow and red-rimmed. You weren't there that night," she whispered. Her voice trembled like she was holding back tears. "What do you mean?" I asked, stepping closer. "The night you were sick," she said, barely audible. "I was alone in the kitchen." She opened the door wider and slowly sank onto the edge of a worn, threadbare couch inside. Her hands trembled in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. "It started around midnight," she said. "I heard footsteps in the front of the shop. I thought maybe you were running late, but when I went to check, no one was there." Her voice cracked and she swallowed hard. "Then I heard more footsteps, louder, closer. I thought someone had broken in. I called out, but there was no answer." I watched her closely. She was unraveling. "Then I saw it," she whispered, eyes darting up to meet mine. A man's shadow standing in the kitchen doorway. He didn't move. He just stood there. I couldn't see his face. She paused. Her mouth opened slightly like she was about to say something else but couldn't bring herself to. Then she said it. "I heard a gunshot, loud, close, like it came from inside the walk-in freezer." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stood there, frozen, watching her fall apart. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Your bakery. It's not right. Something's wrong there. I can't go back. Please don't ask me to." Before I could respond, she shut the door again. Not slammed this time, just quietly, firmly. That night I went to the shop alone. We had prep to do for a Sunday morning delivery, and I told myself I'd be quick, done before midnight. I tried to shrug off what Millie said. Stress, fatigue, maybe even trauma. The streets outside were empty. Our storefront glowed under the half-dead flicker of a street lamp, the reflection warped in the glass. I unlocked the front, flicked on the lights, and headed into the kitchen. Everything looked normal. Quiet, clean, the faint scent of cinnamon still lingering from the morning's batch. I got to work. Then, at exactly 12:40 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not soft, not distant, heavy, measured. Slow steps across the customer floor. I stopped, every hair on my body standing on end. "Hello?" I called out. Silence. Then, whispers. Faint, fractured murmurs, like someone whispering frantically under their breath. The words didn't make sense, just fragments. Pleading, desperate. I reached for my phone, hand shaking, but then I saw something move. A shadow, broad shoulders, standing perfectly still in the kitchen doorway, just like Millie described. I spun around. Nothing. No one. And then, bam! A gunshot. Deafening. My ears rang instantly. I dropped to the floor, hands over my head, my heart slamming against my ribs. The oven timer beeped behind me, cheerful, stupidly oblivious to what had just happened. I sat up slowly, scanning the room. Empty. Still. I checked the alley door. Still locked. No sign of entry. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Like someone was standing right behind me, breathing down my neck. I left everything half-finished and walked home in a daze. The next morning, I couldn't ignore it. I needed answers. I started digging. Old property records, archived news clippings, deep web forums, anything. What I found made my blood run cold. In May of 2000, the building had been a Wendy's. Not just any Wendy's, the one from the headlines. A disgruntled ex-employee named John Tate and his accomplice Victor Mendiz forced the manager to lure all 7 employees into the walk-in freezer. Once inside, they tied them up, covered their heads with plastic bags, and shot them execution style. 5 died on the spot. 2 barely survived, all for $2,400. It was one of the most brutal fast food murders in New York history. Both men were caught and sentenced to life without parole. And now, our bakery stood right where that freezer used to be. The layout matched. The freezer, the back hall, everything. I told my parents. My dad sat there silent, staring at the floor. My mom cried. We called a local priest. Father Jonah came the next morning, from the Catholic church 2 blocks over. He walked through the shop quietly. Then, near the back hallway, he stopped. "This place," he murmured. "It holds pain, fear. They're still here." He performed a full cleansing. Holy water, incense, prayers that echoed through the kitchen like wind down a tunnel. He said the spirits were confused, trapped in the place where they lost everything. After that night, the bakery changed. No more footsteps, no more shadows, no more gunshots. But sometimes when I'm there late, alone and everything's still, I feel it again. Just for a second. A weight in the air. A sadness so thick it clings to your skin. Like someone's watching from the freezer door. Waiting. I never thought I'd end up slinging burgers again. After quitting my last job at a rundown diner on the east side, I swore I was done. With late-night shifts, the smell of burnt oil seeping into my clothes, the ache in my feet after standing 12 hours straight. I meant it. But rent doesn't care about personal vows. And when I moved to Crestston Hollow, I realized fast that a new zip code doesn't mean a fresh start. It just means new bills. Crestston Hollow was odd. Too quiet. Too clean. People smiled too wide and too long, like they'd been practicing in the mirror. Everyone acted friendly, but something about the town felt off, like the cheer was painted over something darker. Still, I needed a job. And when I saw a hiring sign at Wendy's, I didn't hesitate. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a paycheck. And honestly, I didn't have the luxury of being picky. Glenn, the manager, was a wiry guy with jumpy eyes and a voice that never quite matched his expression. He hired me after my second interview no-showed, said he liked my attitude. The shift was 5 p.m. to close, sometimes as late as 1 a.m., depending on cleanup. Easy money, Glenn told me. After 9, you'll barely see a soul. He wasn't wrong. Those first few weeks were slow, dead slow. I'd restock the same packets of sauce no one used, wipe already clean tables, and kill time listening to true crime podcasts that made me question why I ever worked alone. After 9 p.m., it was just me. Darla, the night cook, left right on the dot every night. Then it was silence, save for the hum of the fryer and the flicker of overhead fluorescence that always felt 1 second from dying. Then came Friday. It didn't start scary, just annoying. A group of loud, obnoxious teens came stumbling in around 9:30, clearly drunk or high or both. They ordered half the damn menu and acted like I was personally offending them by not teleporting their food to the counter. One kid knocked over an entire tray of sauces and laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. Another kept calling me Red because of the Wendy's uniform. Real original. By the time they left, it was 11:10. The dining room looked like a war zone. Napkins everywhere, fries crushed into the tile, ketchup smeared across the touchscreen. I was tired, bone tired. I popped in my earbuds, cranked up some indie band I used to like in college, and got to work scrubbing and sweeping. All I wanted was to finish, go home, maybe grab a cheap beer, and pass out watching garbage TV. I was halfway through wiping down the counter when the door chimed. I looked up, heart sinking, already imagining one of those teens coming back for a forgotten phone or to mess with me. But the doorway was empty. The glass door swung inward, slowly, like it had just been pushed. Then it eased shut with a soft click. I frowned and pulled out one earbud. The restaurant was dead silent. And then, I heard it. 3 faint taps. Delicate, almost polite, like a child lightly knocking on a tabletop. My gaze drifted across the counter. She was just there. A little girl, no more than 8 or 9, standing perfectly still. Freckles dusted across pale skin, bright ginger hair woven into 2 neat braids, each tied with a soft blue ribbon. She wore a frilly blue and white dress that looked like something out of a 1950s commercial. Crisp, pressed, too clean for a kid her age. White socks with lace trim, shiny black shoes, not a scuff on them. I didn't feel scared at first, just annoyed. This had to be a joke. One of those kids must have roped their little sister into pulling a prank. "Hey," I said, trying for polite but firm. "Nice costume, but we're closed." She didn't react, just stood there watching me with this strange calm, her head slightly tilted. "You can tell your brothers, or whoever, that I'm not in the mood," I added, stepping around the counter. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked over to one of the booths, climbed up onto the bench with eerie grace, and opened one of the old laminated menus we hadn't used in months. I didn't even know we still had those out. "I want one of everything," she said. Her voice was quiet, smooth, like she wasn't playing. "Take your time." I blinked. "Kid, look, we're closed, and you shouldn't be here alone. Where are your parents?" She looked up at me, unblinking. "I am home." The word stopped me cold. Something about the way she said it, so matter-of-fact, so sure. I felt a shiver trace my spine, but I forced a shrug. Walked out the door into the parking lot, half expecting to see someone crouched behind a car with a camera, laughing. Nothing. The street outside was completely dead. Even the gas station across the road, usually lit up like a beacon, was dark. No flickering signs, no buzzing fluorescence, just stillness. I stood there for a second, scanning the parking lot, listening for laughter, footsteps, the click of a phone recording. Nothing. Just the hum of distant wind and the hollow quiet that only shows up when something's very, very wrong. I stepped back inside. She hadn't moved, still perched at the booth like a regular customer, menu open, her eyes locked on me with unnerving focus. "Listen," I said, trying to sound in control, but my voice wavered. "You can't be here. This isn't funny, this isn't a game, I'm calling the cops. The girl stood. You shouldn't be rude, she said, calm and deliberate. Not in my home. And that's when I felt it. A shift in the air, sudden and deep. The temperature dropped fast, sharp. Cold seeped into my bones, my breath came out in white clouds. Inside, in late summer, she smiled, slow and deliberate, and I swear her teeth looked too white, too perfect. I didn't wait. I backed away, careful not to break eye contact. My legs brushed the counter. Then I turned and bolted toward the back room door. Screw protocol. Screw cleaning. I burst through the front door instead, my sneakers hitting the pavement hard as I sprinted down the street, past the shuttered buildings toward the shitty apartment complex I was renting a room in. That's when I heard it. Not footsteps, not breathing. A scream. A scream that cut through the silence like broken glass through flesh, so sharp it made my ears ring and my vision blur. I turned against every instinct, screaming not to. She was coming, running full speed, her little legs moving too fast to be natural. In her hand, gleaming under the streetlight, was a knife. One I recognized, from the prep station, the same one I used earlier that night. I pushed harder, my lungs on fire, but something yanked my leg, like an invisible wire had caught my ankle. I hit the pavement hard. Skin tore from my palms. My shoulder screamed as it hit the curb. And then, she was on me. The knife drove into my shoulder, then again into my arm, then my leg. I thrashed, kicking, screaming, but the night swallowed every sound. Her face hovered inches from mine. Her eyes weren't eyes. They were painted glass, hollow, reflective, unfeeling. You all need to learn respect, she whispered. She raised the knife again. Headlights. A car screeched to a stop. A door flew open. A woman's voice shouted, panicked and shrill. The girl's head jerked toward the light. Then she ran, silently, back into the dark, disappearing like she'd never been there. The cops came. So did Glenn. So did the questions. They didn't believe me, not really. They mentioned hallucinations. Trauma. A theory about a woman with dwarfism, like that bizarre case overseas. The EMTs drug tested me. I was clean. But the woman who'd stopped her car, she backed me up. Said she saw the girl, the knife, the blood. Still, they never found her. I quit 2 days later. Didn't even pick up my last check. And even now, years later, I still see her. In dreams, sure, but not always. Sometimes in shadows. Reflections. The shape of a ribbon caught in a breeze. Always the same pale dress, the same red hair, the same eyes that don't blink. I try to tell myself it was just a nightmare, a stress response. But deep down, I don't believe it. Because I don't think she was just some ghost. I think Wendy's is hiding something worse. And the real horror? I started to wonder what else they were serving up with those fries. After I left Wendy's, something followed me. I could feel it. Not always close, but watching. Every corner of Crestston Hollow felt like it echoed with the memory of that little girl. Her blank stare, her polished shoes, the blood on her dress. But it wasn't just fear. It was suspicion. That she wasn't the only piece of this. That the whole damn town was in on something. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The two perfect people. The eerie calm. The silence after dark. I tried to shake it. Got a new job at a coffee shop 3 blocks down. Day shifts only. No friars, no uniforms, no red-haired mascots. But the nightmares stayed. And then, one night, as I was closing up, wiping down the espresso machine, I saw her. Not physically, not in the flesh, just her reflection, faint but clear in the steel. Her face, her smile, those eyes. I spun around. Nothing. Just the hiss of the steamer and the hum of the cooler. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, that maybe I was finally cracking. Then the Wendy's burned down. It wasn't a big blaze, just enough to gut the place. The news said it was an electrical fault, old wiring, poor maintenance, but it felt intentional, like the building had been waiting to burn. I went to see it. I didn't mean to, but I ended up there anyway, standing in front of the charred husk of what used to be my life. I should have felt closure. Instead, I felt unearthed. Like the fire had peeled back a layer and revealed something that had been hiding underneath all along. Something old, rotten, hungry. And that girl? She wasn't done. As I turned to leave, I saw something through the smoke. A figure, small, too small to be grown, walking toward the ruins with slow, certain steps. She turned. Her ribbon fluttered in the breeze. She smiled. "You didn't learn your lesson, did you?" she said. I backed away, my breath caught in my throat. And just before I turned to run, she whispered one more time. So quiet I felt it more than heard it. "You'll never leave."